across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, and good afternoon. Welcome to the home of common sense. Thank you to Alex Phillips. There's a shed load of stuff going on here. We are, of course, going to pick up on this confusing... I mean, it really is upside-down world territory at the moment. Police are being pulled from neighbourhood duties to manage migrant protests, sparking fears of a chaotic summer. Migrants now being housed in £400 a night hotels, and some using taxpayer handouts to fund gambling habits. Here's a question. This migrant crisis, where does this all end? Where does this all end? We'll have a look at that in detail in a few moments. Also this afternoon, Health Secretary Wes Streeting offered cheaper lunches to junior doctors in a last-ditch bid to stop 5 days of strike action, but they still rejected his food-based deal. We'll have more on that as well. And shoplifting, here it is again in England and Wales, has surged by 20% to a record-breaking 530,000 offences, with more than half going completely unsolved. I'd say it's probably more like 2/3, which is, of course, technically more than half. I get it. All right, pedants. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. Let's just have a look at this story. A police force has denied that it bussed in pro-refugee protesters. You're familiar with the nuts and bolts on this one. This was Essex Police, of course, categorically denying any wrongdoing to suggest officers inflamed tensions during that protest at the Bell Hotel in Epping. This was back on the 17th of July, so 5 days ago. The pro-refugee group went on to clash with rival protesters, with the chief constable. You heard the statement from him, Ben Julian Harrington. Is his first name Ben Julian and his surname Harrington, or is it Ben Julian Harrington? I'm unsure. He condemned the thugs and the vandals responsible. Essex Police said 10 arrests had been made during the protest after 8 police officers and 2 members of hotel staff were injured. Now, the group we're talking about here, the kind of counter group, is mostly this organisation called Stand Up to Racism, who can't quite get their heads around the idea that being a bit annoyed about sexual assaults on young girls might be slightly unacceptable to law-abiding Brits. The president of that organisation is, of course, you've guessed it, hands up at the back, yes, it's Diane Abbott. That tells you all you need to know. She thinks she speaks on behalf of decency. I'm sure by her calculations, 700 million people attended the counter-protest. Now, there's a few things I don't understand about this, and I cannot be alone, which is why I'm throwing out this question unapologetically, not for the first time. We're trying to get to the kind of nuts and bolts. Why is campaigning against mass, unfettered, unchecked, unidentified migration a racist thing? Why would that be in any way seen as racist? Why is being not just worried, but sometimes scared of 500 anonymous young men being ferried into hotels in your small town? Why would that be a racist thing? And why, when you raise and point out the issue of disproportionality of sexual offences from some groups, why would that be a racist thing? You put it all together and you've got a clear-cut example of where it's all gone wrong. Now, sure, there's always going to be a handful of half-wits with their faces painted in the St George's flag who look like they would kill you if you accidentally bumped into them at the bar in your local pub. Those who want to lob bricks at police cars and attack police officers. The small mob of delinquents will always be with us, but they are small. The average protester is none of these things. In fact, the average protester looks and sounds like this.
We felt a lot of the press were incorrectly reporting us on Friday morning after our protest on Thursday. And so we just wanted to make it really clear that we're strong women, we're mums, we're sisters, we're aunties, we're parents of the area. So we're just here to support. Everybody is really concerned about who is in that hotel. Crime in the area is shocking, and this is a beautiful place to live. And we are all very concerned, as are other people in other towns around the country. We need to stick together peaceful protest, and the government need to listen to us. They need to listen to real people on the ground, people that work hard and love their country. And we're here to protect that. Our values are very important and we must protect them.
So that is the average face of the person that would protest outside some of these hotels. Now, there's the bit here where the Essex police responded to the accusation that they were bussing in loads of protesters to go against people like that. Now, the top cop in charge of all of this, as I mentioned, Chief Constable Ben Julian Harrington, frankly just didn't do a very good press conference on this, because he could have explained some things rather well, because there's 2% of me that understands a bit of what was going on. If a bunch of counter-protesters stand up, you need to be turn up, you need to be absolutely sure where they're going and where they're going to be. Form a ring around them. Make sure they walk where you damn well want them to walk, and ensure they are a reasonable distance from law-abiding people protesting against something else. That's simple. That's not hard to understand. And I can give examples that I saw as a kid of my own eyes, where the police escorted some National Front protesters to an event that was going on, and I remember seeing that out my bedroom window as a small child, thinking, what the heck's going on? They were allowing them to protest and they were taking them to where it was safe distance. Now, that bit I kind of sort of understand. It's not like Keir Starmer made a phone call, right, send the protesters in, boys. None of that happened. So that bit, all right, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. You want a counter-protest, you're allowed to have a counter-protest. We have the right to protest, and the police have the right to make sure nothing kicks off. So forming a kind of ring of steel around the counter-protest kind of makes sense. However, if you turn up as the counter-protester wearing a face mask that even Martin McGuinness would have rejected, then there's a problem. Covering your entire face like you're some kind of paramilitary wannabe, like you're there for hassle, looking like Jason from the Friday the 13th franchise, is not a great look if you're trying to convey peace and decency and a moral high ground, if you like. It just smacks of violent intent. It's also, I'm told, potentially illegal. The police, we hear, do have the right to tell you to take that off your face during one of these protests. So quite how those particular elements of that group found themselves allowed to march anonymously, caped up Hannibal Lecter style, with dark glasses and face masks and ski attire all over their fizzog. How they were... So the cops should have gone, right, OK, we're forming a ring of steel around you guys. You can protest. We're going to walk you to where you can protest. But you, and you... Jason from Friday the 13th and Hannibal Lecter and Martin McGuinness, you're all going home. You ain't getting anywhere near this. You're getting nowhere near it. That was the comment I would like to have heard from Chief Constable Ben Julian Harrington. But we didn't hear any of that. It's forcing the question to me as to where does all of this end? This is madness. I mean, we can talk... The Britannia International Hotel story in Canary Wharf arguably is no different to any other hotel that has been stuffed full of people who snuck their way into the UK. But there is something sort of totemically symbolic about a 4 or 5 star, £400 a night hotel right in the middle of the biggest financial district in Europe. There's something about that that just symbolises this society is broken. We are broken. It just, to everybody looking at this, is yet another chapter in the endless saga of a government that has lost control and has little or no idea how to even begin to solve it. Where does this all end? 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. We have Callum Price is with us on the programme. Callum, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
I only paused there because I wanted to double check. What, the Callum Price? Yes, it is. I mean, it could have been an imposter. Who knows? Callum, good to have you with us.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
Let's start off with that story then. Police are being diverted from local duties, it seems, in order to handle these protests that are going on. So that in itself is a problem. Essex's top cop refusing to quit over officers escorting pro-migrant activists to that hotel in Essex. Let's have a listen, because naturally one of the biggest voices that came out concerned about this was Nigel Farage. Here's what he had to say.
Have a look at this video.
If these are locals, why are they getting in a police car? What time's the next bus? You wait 15 minutes for a bus and then 3 come all along at once. Look, they're all cramming in.
This shows Stand Up to Racism, as they're called, with Antifa, a violent, thuggish group, arriving at the train station and literally, by Essex police, being bussed to the Bell Hotel.
So there was his response, and it is a response, Callum, that is shared by many. Genuine concern around this.
Yeah, and quite reasonably. I think, though, that we need to be really, really careful when we talk about, when we sort of make judgments on how police are policing certain things off certain selective clips. I know from experience that this can be often, when the fuller story comes out, there's a much more context that is extremely important, and also to remember that the job the police are doing is effectively to make sure that violence doesn't escalate and crime doesn't escalate. So what seems to have happened is that I think the chief constable said that they weren't bussing them into the protest, which would have been questionable, but they were bussing them out of them. That's a decision that they made at the time for sort of public safety reasons, to ensure that violence didn't kick off. So that might have been reasonable, but they weren't being bussed in. So that's one bit of sort of clarifying information. But although there is that footage of them escorting people in, if you like, but they also do that. You know, if you ever go to a particularly heated football match, for example, Newcastle Sunderland, they will escort Sunderland fans through Newcastle so that they are sort of trying to keep them apart. So there are public safety reasons you do this. Yeah. But the wider question here is about, as you have already asked, how much will this still go on for? Where is the end game for this? And the end game doesn't really come until something is done about the small boat crossings, something is done about the migrants in hotels, and something is done to make people feel safe and that this is being gripped. We saw what happened last summer when people certainly felt like there'd been a loss of control on this problem. Are we going to get to a point where we're having those problems every single summer because we can't stop the boats and we can't process the migrants quick enough because the courts aren't working, etc., etc., etc. So it's a much bigger problem than just this, but this problem should be viewed with a bit of rationality, making sure we view the whole picture rather than just necessarily selective clips all the time.
No, I get that as well. I did say in defence, there's precedent for this. It's all about safety. If you've got a group of people coming up to counter a protest, then if I was the police, I'd say, right, stick a ring of coppers around those people and make sure they walk where you want them to walk, to your serving officers. So that bit makes sense. You might have heard me mention this, Callum, you might actually go, but you and you, who are dressed up like IRA wannabes, I'm sorry, you ain't coming in here. That wouldn't have been unreasonable, I think, for the police to have at least marked out those who are intent on not showing their face, which smacks of, potential hassle, you might say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The police should be able to and should feel empowered to sort of come down on these protesters who are crossing a line, and whether it be how they're acting or what they're wearing, with the full force of the law. And they need the political cover to do that. They need the government to be saying, we expect these things to be policed as heavily as possible, because if they don't feel that, if you put yourselves in the shoes of your frontline officer, and if you're there in an extremely heated environment and you see somebody wearing a face mask, which you might have the power to say, please take that off or step away, but it's a bit borderline. You're not going, unless you really feel like you've got the backing of your senior officers and the political establishment, that's the Home Secretary and the Police and Crime Commissioner, to go in, unless they're going to back you, then you might go in, you might be worried that you're going to go in, try and clamp down on it, it escalates a bit, and suddenly you're the one on the hook for it. So the police need the support from political leadership to be able to say, no, we expect you to do that. And also, in some cases, they do need more actual legal powers as well. They need the law to be completely on their side. Yeah. The previous government was giving them those powers. I believe the plan is that the current government have taken up that mantle and will be passing them, though that's a part of the boring legislative process that takes a little bit longer than we'd like.
But there is a potential danger around all of this, of course, Callum, that this could get worse. Summer of discontent, words like that are being spoken, the potential for more of these protests. And, of course, it is your right to protest, and understandably there's some really obvious themes around this, that local people in some of these areas are not happy. I think they should be listened to more. And at the moment, there is a sense that not much is happening and the situation is probably going to get worse.
Yeah, it doesn't seem I don't see how it can get better yet, because the numbers of people coming across in small boats is rising and rising and rising. It's at a sort of on its current trajectory. It will be the biggest year on record. Yeah. And that's only going to increase pressure. There's a twofold problem with that. One is the actual impact, so the actual numbers of people coming into the country and where we put them. That's a big problem. But it's also the society, the sort of effect of society on how people feel it is being dealt with. And as the numbers go up and up, they feel less and less like it's being dealt with, and they get more and more scared, more and more upset, and feel like there isn't anybody listening or gripping this problem. So those two things will continue to increase until something's done about it, and I'm not sure that there is a real plan in place to do that. Indeed.
And it's interesting, isn't it, looking at the United States, I mean, putting Mr. Trump's Epstein woes to one side, in terms of immigration, he's almost put a halt to it across the southern border there with his controls. Now, I know it's not everybody's cup of tea. There's 40,000 people in those kind of temporary jails who it's claimed should not even be in the country, and that's had a direct knock-on effect. And I know our situation couldn't be dealt with in quite the same way, but the point is, if someone has the political will to take action, then you can.
Yeah, I think that's right, and there's certainly things that Trump's doing that I wouldn't suggest we do, but there is the overall political will comment is absolutely right, and the government, the first thing they did on this, in terms of tackling the small boats crisis, was to get rid of the main deterrent to stop these people coming over in the Rwanda scheme. The Rwanda scheme was by no means perfect, but it was certainly a deterrent, and there were migrants on the northern coast of France waiting for a Labour government, literally saying, we're waiting for a Labour government, and then we'll try crossing because we don't want to go to Rwanda. Yeah. And even if that's just a handful of people, then that's something, but it proves that the deterrent effect was there, at least to an extent. They've got rid of that. They've now tried to side this deal with the French, this one in, one out deal, which may work. It may prove to be a deterrent in that if people think they're not going to stay in the UK if they manage to get over there, then that may slow the progress. But that's come out and just getting off the ground a year after they've been in office, after they've got rid of the deterrent. So is it a top priority for them? I'm not convinced it is.
Indeed. We'll talk some more in just a moment, Callum. We're going to talk striking doctors, crime epidemic, shoplifting soaring, for goodness sake, and Angela Rayner's air miles. It's enough to make you blush. Details coming next. Callum Price is with us. This is Talk.
We know that the Afghan interpreters stroke Afghan special forces numbered, 1,000 to 1,500 that worked alongside the British forces. And yet we're being told that 18,000 have come in under the cover of darkness. The British people are not stupid. We will always give a safe haven to those that need it. Look how generous the British people have been to the Ukrainians when the war broke out in Europe. It's in our nature to do that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
We're asking the question, reference to the migrant crisis and all that entails. Where does this all end? If you want to drop us a voice note on this, it's arguably the quickest way, and you can bypass the queues as well. 0344 499 1000. Steve says this will only end in civil unrest or even worse, civil war. Politicians don't care and haven't done for decades. And isn't it sad that, thank you, Steve, for that's the way we're forced to think, that our government don't really care about this. Margaret in Birmingham says, where is useless Starmmer and clueless Cooper? He should hold an emergency meeting now. They are both invisible. The British people deserve more and not being treated as fools. They're probably on a Beano to Barcelona or Ibiza right now. It's your summer holiday recess, isn't it, kids? We've got Callum Price with us, Director of Communications at the IEA, looking at the big stories of the day. Here's another biggie that's going to cause chaos, Callum, and that is the doctors' strike. West Streeting is offering cheaper lunches and reduced costs for doctors. It's been rejected, however, as resident doctors prepare for that 5-day strike. Despite a £100 million pledge for training, turnout for the strikes is expected to hit a record low. Let's have a listen then to the Health Secretary speaking on this very issue.
To threaten strikes in these circumstances is unreasonable and unnecessary. Yeah. Patients are begging resident doctors not to walk out on them, and I hope the BMA are listening.
I don't think they are listening, Callum, because whatever he says doesn't seem to make the blind bit of difference, even if he is offering cheaper baguettes.
No, it doesn't really, and I completely sympathise with Wes Streeting to one side. He's making all the right noises. He is pointing out how absurd these strikes are, and the demands that they're asking for, in comparison to what other people have got in that time, and the awful, potentially awful impacts of the strikes on patients and on their colleagues that will have to pick up the slack in that time. But actually, I think the Labour government have really got to look at themselves here and think, how have these strikes come about, and how come the BMA won't move a nudge in our direction? Is it because when we first came into government, we basically gave every striking union exactly what they wanted with no strings attached? Or is it because the Employment Rights Bill we're putting through Parliament right now is going to give unions more and more power? Or is it because the unions, in the broadest sense, are major donors to the Labour Party? I don't know. It could be one of those things, but I'm not quite sure that the Labour government holds all the cards in this one, as they might like to think that they do. Yeah,
27,000 doctors voted for the latest strike, the lowest yet. Picket line numbers expected to fall, so there's not an overarching appetite even among doctors on this one, but the laws as it stands on taking strike action allow them to do this. The devastation, of course, hardly needs outlining, Callum. I mean, it's absolutely horrific.
Yeah, it is. The NHS chief executive, his name escapes me at the moment, but he's made some good noises about trying to get hospitals to cover, to not cancel appointments, and will back them if they need to stretch their staff a little bit to do that, which is exactly the right thing to be doing.
Sure.
The BMA don't seem to have public opinion on their side in this one. Often they do, but I think quite a lot of people are seeing through this, given the size of the demands that they're making. Won't necessarily forgive them too quickly for it.
Let's move to this story. Shoplifting hitting a record 530,643 offences in 2025. 56% unsolved, just 20% charged. Labour, of course, promised to stop this. Here's the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper.
The Tories' 12-year record on home affairs is grim. 6,000 fewer neighbourhood police officers, 8,000 fewer PCSOs, arrests halved, less crime solved, more criminals let off, more victims let down.
More victims let down. Well, she was talking a good talk in opposition, of course, Callum, and as you know, once you get the big gig, it's a very different affair.
Yeah, it's a bit harder than it looks, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's what they found out. Shoplifting in particular, the numbers are shocking. It's gone up 20%, I think, which is the biggest spike ever, and it's extremely high and going up. And shoplifting is a problem not just because it is a crime and it's theft and that is bad, obviously, but it's particularly bad because it's so visible. Lots of people have stories of seeing it happen first and foremost, but not only that, it's very clearly happening on social media. You can go onto any your sort of social media site of choice and very quickly find videos of people walking out of shops with bags full of stuff without anybody really doing anything. But also it makes, I don't know what you think, Ian, but I say every time I go to a shop, I find more and more stuff put behind barriers, or more stuff you've got to go and get from behind the till. I went to my local Tesco recently, and the washing up liquid, the sort of the washing machine liquid, was a dummy. It was a this is an empty bottle. If you want it, you'll have to take it to the till.
Wow.
So you can go and get the actual stuff.
They got security tags on the fish fingers at some of them, which is a terrible state of affairs. They're only about 20p.
It's not. It might not be serious gangland crime, right? But it's the sort of thing that affects everybody and makes everybody feel like the country's just a little bit broken if they can't go to their shop and buy an.
Well, it's a bit like potholes, isn't it? You know, potholes isn't, life-changing in one respect, but it's just very symbolic of a broken society when you can't afford to fix a road.
Exactly, and it really makes you think that what are the police doing? What's the government doing if this is going on? So they need to redouble their efforts. They made all sorts of noises in opposition, I remember well. But clearly nothing has come to fruition yet, and it will take a seriously concerted effort.
Yeah. Let's finish on this one. Angela Rayner's staff, the housing department, flew nearly 320,000 miles in a year. That's the equivalent of going around the world 13 times, and they've only been in power for half an hour. It's up 34%. Total business travel costs 4.7 million quid. Flights emitting 169.4 tonnes of CO2. That's the equivalent to having to grow 8,500 trees for a whole year. You do kind of wonder, it's the housing department. It's very much a domestic issue, quite why that department will be flying so regularly. But it appears we've got a new moniker. Air Miles Ange has joined that long club of politicians that can't help but jump on a plane.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the housing department, Ian. It's the housing and local government department.
Yes.
So if all of the departments to be jet setting, I really don't know why this one is. But the trappings of power and the ability to go, and to be fair, these aren't necessarily just Angela Rayner's miles. These are the miles of civil servants going to.
Of course, yeah, it's her department. But the idea that somebody says, we need to look at models around. That's how I always imagine it in my head. We'll send some officials to look at models.
Fact-finding mission.
But do you find those housing models in Eritrea or Mogadishu, which appears to be the kind of places these people end up?
Well, I mean, maybe they will. We've got it. I doubt it, to be frank. But we do have a serious housing crisis at the moment, so you hope that they are looking at whatever creative alternative solutions they can come up with. I don't think they're going to find them abroad. I think you could probably just do a lot of Googling. And there are various things. There's various ideas that my think tank has at the Institute of Economic Affairs to reform planning regulations. We'd be willing to tell them, and we work approximately 400 yards from their front door.
I was going to say they could come to you, or they could do what they did in February and fly to Ethiopia and then Ghana to have a look at what they're doing. I didn't know that's the sort of go-to places for housing advice, but apparently so. Callum, thank you, as ever. Callum Price is the Director of Communications at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Thank you to him. Over to you, particularly on that question of the migrant crisis. It is a crisis, and it looks as if it's going to get so much worse. Where does it all end? Where does this all end? And why is it that this is beyond the collective wit of mankind, or certainly our government? The last government couldn't even get there either. But, they had this Rwanda thing floating around. It may have done something. We will never fully know. It did appear the numbers started to go down when it looked as if it was going to happen. And then, of course, Starmmer comes in and didn't just cancel it. He cancelled it like he had the kind of support of the world alongside. Yeah, we're going to cancel Rwanda. It's crazy. We're going to concentrate on smashing the gangs. the people busting glings, or whatever it was he called them. And that really hasn't worked, and the numbers are up and look as if they are going to hit record levels at the end of this year. Details on the way. Over to you on that number. If you want to drop us a voice note, 0344 499 1000. 1:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. This in from Lorraine Yvette Cooper is a shameful excuse for a Home Secretary. Her silence speaks volumes. Also, where is Jess Phillips, the minister who professes to support women and girls? As for Starmmer, he's a disgrace. This government is failing the British people, and they simply do not care. That is such a common view that even those... Look, if you go to social media, you will always get a rather checkered picture of what is going on. It will be angry, understandably. Sadly, that anger often breeds some inaccuracy on quite a lot of stories, and sometimes it's not the most important level of inaccuracy, but it kind of matters because we lose the room a little bit if you don't get stuff right. There was a story with this Bell Hotel where obviously they want to close it and get rid of the people. And a story went around the other day, a couple of days ago, that the Britannia International Hotel, the one in Canary Wharf, they were all being ferried from the Bell Hotel to the one in Canary Wharf. And there was no truth in that. I never thought there would be truth in that, but it didn't stop about 17 million people sharing it on social media. Now, it's not the end of the world, because the principle of this argument is whether anyone should be in a hotel, regardless of where it is. But accuracy kind of matters, particularly when you're trying to win the moral high ground, because the opposition will jump on it every step of the way, which is why it's always disappointing when you do get that kind of very minor, sort of half a dozen half-wits who turn up who want to throw bricks at coppers, wherever it happens to be, who don't represent anywhere near the full throttle of views of the British public or those in the local area, but they kind of dominate the headlines. And so, all the while we have that, it allows the likes of Starmmer and these, horrendous politicians to jump on that and go, look over there. That's what we're dealing with. That's the problem. When, of course, it's a small contingent of what happened. So accuracy is really important, but you look at it is kind of extraordinary. Why are you not talking about this? People phone in to us. Finn takes the phone calls at this end on our show. Go, why are you not talking about this? I'll tell you why we're not talking about it, because it's not true, mate. It didn't actually happen. Yeah, it is true. I saw it on Twitter. Yeah, that's likely to compound our suspicion that it's not true. You know what I mean? It's that. And it's such a shame, because Twitter is always a really great place when a breaking news story happens. I've said this for years. For about 30 seconds, and it really isn't much more than 30 seconds, Twitter is almost the place to be, or X, whatever you want to call it. Because somebody who was there, or somebody who experienced or saw something, will post, look, I don't know what it is, but I've just heard an explosion, or I've just seen a load of people going down a street. It's after that, everybody jumps, we know what that is, don't we? Blah, blah, blah. And there's 27 theories within 5 minutes. So you have to kind of treat all of that with kid gloves. But to retain the moral high ground, to get the ears of politicians, it is important to get the kind of full extent of the story absolutely correct. And we know with what's been happening with the protests outside hotels, there's been a huge knock-on effect with the police, who are being pulled from neighbourhood duties to manage the migrant protests. This sparks fears, of course, of a chaotic summer, and this follows rallies in Epping, where police were under fire after officers were seen escorting pro-migrant activists to a migrant hotel where violence broke out. Meanwhile, it's been revealed that migrants are now being housed in £400 a night hotels, and some are even using taxpayer handouts to fund gambling habits. I mean, the world's gone nuts. We will speak to Graham Whettone, a very respected police voice. He's a former cop of many, many years. We'll chat to Graham in just a moment. First, Nick Buckley, former Manchester mayoral candidate and author. Afternoon to you, Nick. I mean, I keep using these phrases, Alice in Wonderland kind of world. We've gone upside down. It's all skew-if. Everything's out of focus. There's a sort of malaise out there at the moment, an underpinning of madness in our country.
And it's taken us decades and decades and decades to get to this point now. This Labour government may be incompetent, but so has the last 3, 4, 5 governments we've had in this country, all been incompetent. The only difference between this Labour government and the Tory governments was this government is so bad, it can't even lie correctly. It can't even lie at a competent level. At least the Tories were good at lying, but this government can't even lie to us where most of us believe it. So that's where they're failing, not good enough liars. But this issue we've got at the moment, I can smell violence in the air, and I've been saying that now for about at least a year. We're almost at the brink. We're on a knife's edge. We're waiting for one more spark, and the next spark is going to set off a series of violence that me and you have not seen since the Troubles in Northern Ireland. That's how bad it's going to get. There's still time to turn this around. It will take the government to U-turn on so many things, but they can stop this. They can turn this around. And you were just saying a minute ago about some people, protesting, it turns to violence. Some idiots are throwing bricks, which always seems to happen. But you need to ask yourself, why does it get to that stage? Because people for decades and decades have been telling the government what they want them to do. And the governments have been lying to us and promising they're going to end mass migration, they're going to heavily reduce mass migration. Every government says that, and every government does the opposite. And people are now saying, what else can we do? What can we do in a democracy when the people won't listen to the people anymore? And I don't want violence. I really don't want violence. But I can't see a way out of this now.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly a delicate situation. It is a shame that there is that sort of very small, and it is small, contingent that, the brick throwers and, let's jump on a police van and try and attack a cop. I want to see those people put in jail like anybody else does. But the majority of people that I've looked at and spoken to who've been on those kind of protests are nothing of the sort. They're, their mothers, their daughters, their family people who are saying, this is... from so many different angles, whether it's about social cohesion, whether it's about danger, whether it's the fear of the unknown, whatever it happens to be. In those areas, if you put hundreds of people into a hotel in a small town somewhere, then the idea that locals, unidentified people, by the way, we have no idea who these people are, if they jumped the barriers at Heathrow Airport and then been put into a hotel, then we'd be thinking, hang on, that's a bit weird. But for some reason, it's almost given a free pass, and then those that do want to protest are kind of written off as right-wing thugs.
And again, been going on for decades. Why do we? I mean, let's be honest. Closing our borders is an easy thing to do. If I was in power tomorrow, I could close our borders in 24 hours and make sure not one more illegal person entered across the channel. That's how easy it is to do. Don't let anyone tell you the opposite. It's easy. All it requires is a backbone. and we haven't got anyone in authority with a backbone to leave the European Court of Human Rights, to get us out of the UN Convention of Refugees, to go against the woke, to go against the shouldn't we all be pink and fluffy? These people are refugees. They're fleeing war. They're fleeing at over 15 European countries to get to our country. We haven't got anyone with a backbone. That's what we're missing, a backbone to solve some of our problems. With a backbone with stature.
I was going to say, Nick, I sense it's, particularly with this government, it's kind of not in their DNA. They're uncomfortable in calling it out and telling it like it is. I've lost count of how many journalists now have made their way to Calais to talk to some of the people. Many of them brutally honest. I don't believe all of these people trying to get across is a mad rapist who wants to do horrible things to your kid. But I am nonetheless still concerned why somebody unfettered and, in fact, unrequired and not allowed to comes. You know, it's not a shopping list of, oh, I fancy living there. Most of these guys will go, yeah, I want to come to the UK, I want to get a job because I come from a place that's not very nice, Eritrea, Iran or something. Yeah, I agree. I think if I was them, I'd be giving it a go probably. But that doesn't mean to say we should be going, yeah, come along, in you come. And of course, governments struggle to call that out because I sense they're scared witless of being accused of, you know, being something horrendous or some nut job or extremist if they dare simply speak the truth.
Racist. Please don't call me racist. Please don't call me racist. That's our political class.
Yeah.
And let's look at the people who are trying to come over. I agree with you. You know, most of them are not criminals. Most of them are not rapists. A significant portion are. You know, the UK at the moment is the rape capital of Europe. The rape capital of Europe, the UK is now. But let's look at these individuals. What I would say to these individuals is, first of all, you're not wanted. You're not wanted in our country. Put that straight. You're not wanted. Why don't you go home and stop being cowards and running away from your own problems and running away from your own ancestral homeland? Stop being a coward. Go fix your home. Don't abandon your women, your children, your mothers, your aunties, your children, whatever. Fix your homelands. This is why the third world never gets any better. Because in the West, we allow them to be cowards and run away from their responsibilities and to build a better country. We're trying to help them all the time.
Nick, listen, I've got to cut in there for no other reason than time. Very robust stuff, and thank you as ever, Nick Buckley, MBE, former Manchester mayoral candidate and author. Thank you to him. That's his position. Let's look at the policing side of this. We've just come under some criticism here. Graham Whettone is a former police officer, many years' experience. Also the author of How to Be a Police Officer. How to be a police... Let's just pick up, Graham, and good afternoon to you, by the way. Always good to see you and speak. What we're seeing at the moment, and the headlines, I'm sure, betray the reality here. I totally understand it, that if a group of counter-protesters turn up on a train, then the top cop, whoever's in charge of that patch, has got a duty to make sure that that group of people go exactly where the chief wants them to go and nowhere else. Hence the reason why you might see cops walking down the road surrounding the group. They're not escorting them because they've been asked to turn up to a protest and kick off. They're escorting them because it's public safety. Would that be about right?
Yeah, afternoon. Yeah, absolutely right. I've done it dozens and dozens of times with different groups from all sides of the political spectrum. National Front regularly lay a wreath at the National Service of Remembrance a Sunday afternoon after all the dignitaries have done. They got escorted every single year along the pavement, down the roadway. I've done it with numerous protest groups from across the political spectrum. It isn't about picking a choice between left and right, which some have been accusing the police of. It's just basic. It's basic police tactics. You're managing and controlling the group. You know where they are, where they're going, and you've got police officers with them all the time. So it's normal police tactics.
Yeah, I mean, that bit I get. The bit that I don't understand, Graham, that if you were expecting a busload or a trainload of counter-protesters to something like we saw in Essex, so they turn up, the police are there, say, right, guys, we're going to escort you to the area, we're going to place you here. However, 4 of you are dressed up like you're an IRA paramilitary. You're going nowhere, sunshine. Stay in the back of the van. This is not for you. That's the bit that I think has irked some people. How do you turn up looking like, you know, Jason from Friday the 13th and not get nicked?
Because it's not illegal to have face coverings or masks on. It only becomes prohibited if the command on the day puts what's called a 60 AA order in place.
Yeah.
which then requires officers to ask people to take their mask off. So if the 60 AA is in place, so me as an ordinary officer working at an event cannot go up to someone with a mask on and tell them, ask them to take it off unless that order is in place. It's a piece of legislation that the senior officer has to then put in place for that area for a specific period of time. If that's in place, then you can ask them, require them it is, to remove it. If they then refuse, they may be liable to arrest. If you're then going to start arresting people refusing to remove face coverings, one, you need the officers to do it, as in to make the arrest. Two, you need the vehicles to then transport them away from the area, because I guarantee you, as soon as you start making 1 or 2 arrests, the rest of the group will try and release them, and then you've got a different disorder situation on your hands. So it's a balance then between whether you let them walk with a mask on, or whether you start intervening to the extent where you might actually escalate the situation.
Then you create another kind of...
It's a very fine balance.
I get that, but it is, you know, a lot of people, Graham, would go, hang on a second, look, it's demonstrably aggressive to be dressed like that. You know, that doesn't look like you're a peaceful contingent. It looks like you're here for a bit of stick and hassle.
I agree, but Parliament hasn't legislated against it yet. You can turn up to all sorts of protests with a mask on. It's then up to the police to decide, we're actually going to put an order in place to ask you to take that mask off. If you then refuse, we may arrest you. But as I said, to make those arrests, you may then escalate the situation even further, and you may or may not have the resources then to deal with that escalation. That's another balance you have to take into account. Have you got the vehicles to move that person away from the area, or are you going to be stuck with that prisoner, for want of a better term, for some time while you're waiting for a van to turn up? And that can cause you even more problems. And
just a final point on this, you know, of course, it's a never-ending task. You can never win being a cop, or, you know, certainly working out where to, you know, employ or deploy, rather, individuals. If something happens out of nowhere, then you've somehow got to muster hundreds of officers from neighbouring forces sometimes, often travelling the country for big events. We've seen that in the past, of course. So it is tricky. There is a sense that, you know, you only need half a dozen big protests outside hotels to completely tip the scales against police distribution of manpower, as it were. Hence the reason why many areas will lose out on policing, because the cops have to be elsewhere.
There is not a reserve of public order officers in this country. They are literally your frontline 999 response officers on earlys, lates and nights. They are taken away from those duties. And there's something called mutual aid, where forces can assist each other. But as we saw in Southport last year, the difficulty policing faces is how quickly, and you mentioned it in your intro, how quickly posts on social media can start to become true and factual. And people are responding to that, as we saw in Southport and we saw in Epstein the other night. Something gets posted on the internet and other people start to come to it. It is exceptionally difficult for policing to respond that quickly to that sort of public order situation, with enough resources to manage it properly. If they're given a day or two, you can gather your resources, you can brief them and deploy them, you can put a tactical plan in place. If it happens literally in the space of a couple of hours, it's exceptionally challenging then to have enough resources to manage that properly. We'll probably see a completely different response in Essex today, if there's another protest or over the weekend, than we saw last week.
Got it. Listen, always thorough stuff, and great to talk again, Graham. Thank you. Graham Whetstone, former police officer, 30 years experience in the job. Your thoughts on what he had to say. Gary says, as the law stands, the police are entitled to require protesters to remove face coverings where criminality is likely. Well, there have been multiple arrests in Epping hotel protests, so criminality isn't likely. It's actually happened. So it's nonsense for your earlier guest to claim that police officers could have got into trouble for making protesters at the protest remove their face coverings. They wouldn't. They would have just been doing their job. So I think Gary's making the point that they wouldn't need that, what Graham referred to as special order that the chief of police has to make in order to empower the police, or give them the power to insist somebody takes off the face cover. I mean, that's the area for me that I just thought that's highly iffy, that you're sending in a group of counter-protesters. By definition, that's already a delicate situation. But half a dozen of them, maybe more, are dressed like Hannibal flipping Lecter. Wouldn't you go, that's not probably the best look? There is possible criminality, going to go, as Gary says. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Of course, what happened in 1997 or thereabouts was Tony Blair said education, education, education. And some smart and ambitious police officers thought, we'll have a bit of this. And off they went to university to get their degrees. And they came back with their heads brainwashed with pseudo-intellectual Marxist claptrap. And so the police service we have today is unrecognisable from the policing of my era.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's go right to it and get some comment in from you. Here's a voice note from Kitty.
I actually think peaceful protest is the way to go. It is terrifying. The government, hardly any have happened so far, and they're in a tears. I don't particularly want Labour to fix the migrant crisis because that means they might get voted in and they just set out to destroy our country. But I do think that mass peaceful protests could topple this government, and that is the best of everything. And then a proper government comes in and solves the migrant crisis and actually looks after our country.
Yeah, big ask, Kitty, but I understand you. Here's one from Stuart.
Hi, Ian. Can we just be serious about this? The people that are throwing the bricks are the same that were throwing them with Black Lives Matter and over trans and everything else. They're the same people. But the normal British people are getting just sick and tired of having the mickey taken out of them. And it is going to turn violent and there's going to be a lot of trouble. And it's coming. And it's very, very close as far as I'm concerned.
There is a sense of that. Marcus is in Norfolk. What are your thoughts on this, Marcus? Good afternoon.
Hi, Ian. Yeah, I was at the DIS protest on Monday, and I see what the government are doing. They're shipping people in. They weren't locals who were. They're looking to get you all chant and send them home so they can call everyone far right, which is...
well, that particular... I mean, I don't know which group it was that turned up, but certainly the main group that appeared to be behind this stand-up to racism, I mean, don't underestimate how quick those bozos can get somewhere if they want to.
Yeah, I was speaking to a local who seen him get all off the train, so there are definitely things going on. But I think we need to be clever and smarter. We all want safer streets for our children. You know, we're in an SOS situation, so let's save our streets. Let's all stand up.
And the crazy thing about this, there's many angles you can come at it from. Even if we establish that none of the people in hotels mean any harm to anybody, okay, let's assume that's the case. It still doesn't make it okay, right? I mean, the sheer amount of numbers. You can argue this case from an economic perspective. You can argue it from a social case. You know, what is the advantage to our country to have an extra 50,000 people a year rock up from third world countries to live in the UK, even assuming they're all nice people?
Well, there's no... my daughter actually works at the hotel, and the families who are there are obviously integrating into our society, into this. Our local MP, Adrian's been asking where they were going.
Yeah.
And I think they are going to stay. There was a statement from the hotel saying it wouldn't be for single men, which makes me relieved, as my daughter would be working there with them on night shifts, so it can make a difference.
100%. Marcus, great call. Thank you very much for starting us off. And that's the interesting bit about this story, which should be the interesting bit to the government, OK? Because the government are quite relaxed about going, it's just some far-right nut jobs. I mean, talk about the inability to read the room. You don't even need to look closely at the story to understand and see, and there is some evidence of criminality and concern based on specific offences, people being arrested and charged. So the government will utilise the figures and say, yeah, but there's more of these far-right thugs than there are horrible criminals, and therefore, as a result, we can, quite simply write off every protester as some kind of dodgepot. I mean, that's not fair, and it's inaccurate. But let's assume that everybody was a decent, lovely person that's in those hotels. Let's assume that. It's still not right, OK? So it doesn't matter if you don't want to talk about offences and goodness knows what else. It's still not right. We'll talk to Steve should we talk to Steve in just a little bit, just so we give you enough airtime, Steve? This comes in from Sharon, who says, you ask where will all this end? I fear as more and more migrants come to our shores, more and more money will be spent accommodating them and provide them with luxury lifestyles. Despite the government's rhetoric on smashing the gangs, they're doing completely the opposite, demonstrably planning for more and more arrivals by constantly increasing the buying up of accommodation by means of hotels and the private rental sector. This is going to completely bankrupt the country, not to mention the billions of pounds worth of giveaways to Chagos in Iran. The financial sector will have to get involved and this government's days will be numbered. Bang on from Sharon. There it is right there. So let's assume you don't know anything about illegality and bad migrants doing bad things to locals. None of that. Economically, Sharon's outlined it there. You can't carry that on. It's costing millions a day, 7-8 million a day of your money to facilitate an industry that is growing by the day. So just that alone is enough for you to be absolutely bloody fuming. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. You can message us 87222. We'll go back to more of your calls and comments in just a couple of moments. Right now, let's get the latest news headlines at 2 o'clock.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good afternoon. 3 minutes after 2 o'clock. So, as we've been discussing, police are being pulled from neighbourhood duties to manage migrant protests, fearing and sparking fears of a chaotic summer, with migrants now being housed in £400 a night hotels. Where does this all end? Where does the migrant crisis issue end? Because all you can see at the moment is an escalation of the situation. More and more people coming over the channel, more and more people put into hotels. British taxpayers already at breaking point cannot afford this. Social cohesion cannot afford this. More from you on the way. Also this afternoon, former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has confirmed he's launching a new party with fellow former Labour MP Zara Sultana, currently referred to as Your Party, although that's now been denied, promising to tackle injustice and challenge the rich and powerful. Oh, he's such a socialist, isn't he? What does that mean? You're going to challenge the rich and powerful. So rich and powerful, don't we need rich and powerful people? That's like the very essence of success. And the United Nations has opened the door to Britain being sued over its historic contribution to climate change. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news, it's right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. Jack Mills says after a whole year of smashing the gangs, it seems that this has now been replaced with one in, one out. So far, it's been about 1,000 in and none out. Yeah, don't hold your breath on that one, Jack. I can't imagine any level of success emanating from this Franco-English deal. Michelle says, I don't think I would want to be treated by any doctor who's been blackmailed for money at the expense of innocent people's lives. So cruel, reference the inevitable doctors' strikes. And Terry on the same point says the doctors should try living on minimum wage like most shop staff and others have to do. My doctor's surgery never reopened after COVID. Our local doses or something. Anyway, it might be a typo at the end, but I get the point, Terry. Thank you very much indeed for that. Let's get a word on the big stories of the day from a political angle. Oscar Redrop, former number 10 advisor to the Prime Minister, is with us. Oscar, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
I should not the current Prime Minister, I should suggest. That would be like a terrible marriage, wouldn't it?
No, over my dead body, absolutely not.
Absolutely right. Well, he's up to his neck in it, frankly, on what is happening at the moment. And we know that the issue around migration and all that's gone on, the hotels and the the escalating bill, millions and millions a day the British taxpayers are paying for this. And of course, now you have this interesting scenario where the local police, and I understand the explanations behind it, are under fire. There's been requests for the Essex police chief to quit over his handling of the protest. What are you making of what is happening in that specific area to start with, Oscar? Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. I mean, it's a hugely complex situation, and because of last summer, the stakes feel incredibly, incredibly high. I think Farage was one of the main actors first out the door calling for a potential resignation on it. I think, and I'm really split on this, I think purely politically, sorry, in terms of process, not politically, if you want to be Prime Minister of the country and you are not a campaigner anymore, and Farage is certainly not that at this point, he's ahead of the polls, he is, as we sit here now, in many ways, he's on his way to number 10 in several years' time, if the current trajectory remains as it is. I think you have to be very careful when you start commenting on policing, particularly when the stakes are so high and tensions are so high. And I found that slightly problematic at this moment in time. Of course, you can campaign and talk to the issues of why we're at this place, why we're here, why we're so scared, quite frankly, as a nation in terms of the last summer months ahead. But when you're commenting on policing process, I think at this moment in time, I think you have to be careful, and I don't think it's something that someone who's...
Yeah, I think you're right. And also, I mean, I remember there was an exchange between the head of the Met and Lee Anderson at a select committee about a year ago, if you remember that. And
I do.
Lee just looked like a bit of a nut job, and Mark Rowley clearly knew what he was talking about, and it was kind of in that ballpark, really, because I'd have expected more of Lee Anderson. And Nigel Farage, if he became Prime Minister, you absolutely know, Oscar, because you know this for fact, he would be adopted on this specific issue, would be absolutely adopting the same policy of policing as has happened yesterday in Epping.
Absolutely. I mean, on the other end of the political scale, I found our Deputy Prime Minister's comments on this a couple of days ago. Unbelievable. Just, we're very, very concerned. We're very, very nervous about potential rioting this summer. As if, and this is at the other side of the Farage coin as we sit here now, as if the government have no control or can implement no change or effect on events in this country. They're just sitting there waiting. And then on the issue itself, what I found most fascinating about it is when we rewind a year ago and Starmmer, made that drew that parallel between the actions and the issues and the feeling, far right, far right, far right. You look at a lot of the people who are in Epping. I mean, these are just mums and dads.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how else to put it. I mean, these are just regular mums and dads who have quite clearly had enough, and that I think is a real. It is different, and that is a real change. And it's almost palpable. You can just feel out there right now that the constant blind-eyed kind of ignoring of these key issues that led to this. I mean, Keir Starmer the other day in front of the liaison committee, kind of shrugging his shoulders and saying, "Oh, we've got plenty of housing. We've got plenty of room to house
yes,
asylum
that was an
seekers."
extraordinary moment. Just the liaison committee.
And I don't think enough. I know Dan Hodges, who comes on Talk, I think fairly regularly, made a big deal of it. But I think that's been kind of lost. I mean, I just thought that was the most tone-deaf, outrageous statement from a prime minister at this moment in time in terms of not being able to read the country in the room I've ever seen.
I wonder whether the whole kind of migrant narrative, and I've been sort of slightly tentatively exploring this in the last hour, Oscar, whether, because Starmer, of course, will easily write protest off as, far-right thugs, and as you just rightly said, Oscar, if you look at the people there, we've spoken to people there, it is anything but that. But is the way, do you think, perhaps to slightly change the terms of the narrative, in that a lot of it seems to be about the safety of young girls? When you've got 300 men stuck in a hotel from a third world country, there is a level of concern. Now, that's completely legit, but it's that bit that allows Starmer to go, look, you've got very little evidence that there is industrial scale sexual assault going on. Of course there are some regrettable incidents and they'll be dealt with. So if you define it in that way, it makes you sound like you just think that brown people are sex offenders. Whereas the stronger argument for many might well be the economics don't stack up, social cohesion doesn't stack up, the drain on local facilities don't stack up. Now, it's not quite a sexy an argument. You almost need, I don't know, the modern-day equivalent of Adam Smith to stand up and be championing the protest, to say, we are going to be bankrupt at this rate. That should be the if you like, the centre point of anger.
Yeah, and we get these, we get one-off incidents that are kind of the tip of the iceberg and spike the public outrage and anger. But underneath the surface, that iceberg is, miles deep. And of course, the economic argument, I think, probably takes up most of that iceberg. And it's just the failure to confront the issues, the failure. And actually, these mums and dads who are out there at the moment, and of course, protests, and they can take in all kinds of different people with ulterior motives. Sure. But the mums and dads, the regular folk who are out there right now, these are people that many years ago, maybe before I was born even, these were the regular mums and dads that politicians attentively listened to and cared about, you felt, no matter what the political party in power was. And these are the people now who are out there on the streets going, I don't know who represents me. I'm worried about my community. I'm scared for my safety, my prospects, my families, my children's, and nobody is listening to me. That is a very, 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 it's a new thing. It is new, and it's a very, very sad state of affairs.
And I wonder, Oscar, whether, the advice to the Prime Minister is, look, somebody saying to Keir Starmer, exactly what we've been saying. You know, you must understand, Prime Minister, these are just ordinary men and women. And Starmer's position, via his advisors and the like, is, yeah, but if you acknowledge that, then we have a real problem just by acknowledging it. So what we need to do is play the either ignore it, or when we do speak about it, we'll talk about the thuggery aspect, which is minor. I mean, so minor, it hardly touches the sides. But we'll talk about that a little bit, and that way, people who don't read the news an awful lot, or anyone who's a die-hard Labour supporter, will be with us anyway on that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a bit of empathy. I mean, empathy's probably wrong. I have sympathy with the Prime Minister on this front. But the other reality is that Keir Starmer's pretty hated out there. And so him saying anything on this issue is actually likely to be counterproductive in terms of cohesion and things not spiralling out of control and us not seeing the incredibly, and let's not get this wrong, like some of the violent, awful seeds we saw last summer. Him saying anything to try and, even if you took the approach of, actually, I want to acknowledge, I want to understand people's pain. And I think, if anything, that's just going to inflame, that's just going to annoy people even more, because he's seen as a central figure, unfairly or fairly, depending on what your perspective of politics is. He's seen as almost the symbol of an out-of-touch kind of politician, lawyer class that has trivialised in many ways these regular mums and dads out there.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, you know, if people are looking for a new political party to go to because they're not happy with the Labour government, they're a bit unsure about reform, the Tories, well, we'll come on to them in a minute, but there's always a new one on the block, almost by the week at the moment. Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana have launched a party that we thought was going to be called Your Party, although they've now said, no, it's not called that, and we don't know what the name it is. But nonetheless, what a dynamic duo of political might we have in this pair.
Yeah, so I've got a slightly counterintuitive... Well, so Corbyn, you look back to kind of around that 2017 time, and I was in my very early 20s at that point. But even forgetting that, you know, people were chanting his name in football stadiums, and then we had Theresa May, and that was all that. You know, Theresa May up against that looked like a real mess, actually, and you know, no charisma and very shaky. And then you saw this guy getting, you know, regular normal people chanting his name at Glastonbury in football, though that's not aged particularly well. But you know, in football stadiums, and I kind of thought, hang on a minute. There is something, whether you like the politics or not, there's something going on here. But how wrong I was over the years, that what has been revealed about Corbyn and his kind, and it's at this point, it's kind of sad. I mean, I almost feel like someone needs to just put their arm around him and say, Jeremy, it's, you know, it's done. It is so over. And I think this. I mean, I've been a few Tory people that I speak to. You know, oh, this can be quite helpful in, you know, splitting the Labour Party. If I'm honest, I think even someone like Keir Starmer can be like, look, if you want to join this, you know, if you want to join this bunch, you know, feel free. Yeah. If anything, I think it just shines a spotlight on some of the crazies that actually someone like Starmer probably pragmatically knows he doesn't need to look after anymore. It's been a chaotic launch. It was a chaotic launch when Zara launched it on social media a couple of weeks ago, and Corbyn was spitting blood about it.
Yeah, he wasn't happy.
But just last thing to provide some fairness to politics, social media has a huge part in this in terms of bypassing, you know, the normal instruments of communication a lot of the time. It is interesting the fragmentation we're seeing. I have no faith they have any serious people who can actually get them on their feet properly. But you know, with quite a few years before the next election, that argument on the left, the Green Party are currently electing a new leader. The left will have a say, and so you know, it's one to watch, even if it's just slightly laughing.
Indeed, and they do tick. Corbyn and Sultana, or Corbana, as they will be known as a collective, are clearly ticking every socialist box on this one. They're blaming billionaires and corporations for poverty. It's interesting, isn't it, that by any measure, no matter who you are objectively, capitalism has taken more people out of poverty in this world than any other single ideology. Not always perfect, and it sometimes goes awry a little, but nothing else. It's never acknowledged by the left, but they do quite like the idea of running with the narrative that the rich and the powerful are the problem, which I always find extraordinary. I thought by now maybe the left would have gone, or the Corbyn left would have gone, yeah, that didn't really work for us, that one. You know, even back in the 70s it was a bit iffy, but we're going to still carry on with it nonetheless. Yeah, unfortunately, and, you know, for the criticism that I'm sure she rightly gets on occasions, you know, at least Rachel Reeves seems to be climbing down on this idea of a wealth tax, for example, because, I mean, even when that was being muted, even, you know, very, very quietly, you know, the brain drain and the talent drain that we have from this country over the last year or so with the Labour government, if they start moving any further to the left on stuff like that, and of course the jobs tax, you know, if they start moving into that kind of Corbyn kind of wealth taxi territory, I mean, we are already on our knees. And it scares me to think what would happen if more business creators, if more job creators left this country. It'd be terrifying. Well, let's finish on this story. I was about to say your old party. I mean, I'm assuming you are still sort of a Conservative, Oscar. But we do know that membership is down over there at Tory HQ. It's dropped by 8,000 since Kemi Badenoch became leader in November. We know that Reform leads the Tories in the polls. I mean, it's more bad news, really. I know we don't always judge it on membership, but there is a certain level of significance when the world's oldest and most successful political party is hemorrhaging members to this extent. It's hugely concerning, and it's been a while since that last election. I think because of the knots Labour tied up themselves into early on with the freebie scandal and Sue Gray and all that. I think there was a bit of, actually, you know, maybe things will be all right, and Reform have only gained more and more and more traction and influence, and so it's hugely concerning. But if I can just make a little mini pitch for Kemi here. Go for it. It's the... Let that tone in. Go for it. No, seriously, because I want to see her succeed. I think it's great to have successful leaders. So there is the 10%, the best 10% of Kemi is, I think, slightly untouchable. She has something that none of the other leaders in this country have when she's at her best. But we probably only see that, and maybe 10% is being generous. We've probably seen a 5% of that magic. And if the people around her, if Kemi herself, if the party, over the next year or so, 6 months, whatever, weeks, do it now, forget a year. If they can find ways to get that magic from 5% to 90%, then I honestly think Kemi can bring the Tories back from the brink. I really do. Interesting. But I really do, because she does. She has an ability and a way of seeing things. And we haven't seen it, and I'm confused as to why sometimes, but a way of communicating that is so rare, I think, these days, and it can be magic. Yeah. So just get it out there. It's neat, work in progress maybe is the response from the Tory leadership, we hope. Listen, Oscar, always great to gauge your views on the big stories. Thank you, Oscar Redrop, former advisor to Boris Johnson when he was Prime Minister inside Number 10, during the good days, by the way, if that's the right way to look at it. Back to you, 0344 499 1000. That's where you can leave a voice note as well. Comments on this big question, the migrant crisis, where does it all end? Details from you coming next.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
2. We'll talk to Steve in Redditch in just 1 second. First, here's a voice note from another Steve.
The British people don't have a stake in democracy anymore. We don't have a say on what goes on in our own country. Politicians lie in their manifestos. For the last 5 elections, is it, since Cameron came to office, they have promised us to reduce immigration down to the tens of thousands, and then just gone behind our back and put it up to over 1 million a year. So what's left? Democracy has failed us. What is left apart from direct action, apart from civil disobedience, apart from an uprising? What is left? The people of Britain do not have a say anymore in what goes on in our country, and the anger is boiling.
Yeah, there it is, the sense of impotence that the electorate have. Steve in Redditch, what have you got for us, Steve? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Good to speak to you.
You too.
How long have you got?
Go on, fire away. Let's give it a go.
Right, it was just in response to your ex-police officer who called up a little earlier. I apologise, I've forgotten his name.
Graham.
Graham.
Okay.
Yeah, just about how he said that, police handled the Essex situation. Firstly, when comparing it to a football match, with the reference to that, it's a completely different scenario. You're trying to escort usually away fans to a home ground, and you've got to get them through a lot of people of the opposition without any disorder. And it's it's a pre-planned operation. The police know it's going to happen, so they've got more officers. Okay, so there's slight difference. So I did phone up yesterday, spoke to Jonathan just about the Essex situation. And, I mean, the first thing that I've seen is that, and again, only going by what we've seen and heard online mainly on some of the news channels, is there was an established peaceful protest. Now, the officers there should be, their first thought would be maintaining the King's peace. As any officer goes out, whether you're on your own, looking after a protest is maintain the peace. Okay, so this protest was, attended by local residents who responded to an abhorrent crime, and they were peacefully protesting. And then it has only become disorderly when another group, in this case the Antifa, anti-racism, etc., have turned up but have been escorted by the police. Now, I just think the last ex-officer that was on, that's why these protests go wrong, if that's how it's being done. There's plenty of laws in place to prevent this. Like I say, prevent any disorder taking place. Now, under the Human Rights Act, I think I said this yesterday, your right to assemble, which is what they were doing, to have their say, is a qualified right, and this can be suspended if the police believe, or any other authority believe, that there's going to be disorder, violence, or harm's going to occur. Now, it's a hard decision to make because you're going to get lots of
right to protest voices and all the rest of it.
Yeah, but it can be suspended if there's a risk of harm, which is surely common sense. So
I mean, you've brilliantly identified that, because I struggle with this. I'm sure we all do a little bit. Look, I stand up to racism. I'm sure it's full of some very nice people. I don't dispute that. I'm sure there's some few dodgepots in there as well. However, I understand their right to protest. We're not North Korea. You're allowed to do it. However, if there's going to be a potential tinderbox situation, which is the point you're making, Steve, then that you're suggesting that would be a point where you would actually go, do you know what, you haven't got the right at this moment to protest because we think it's going to flare up. Although critics of that, Steve, would go, do you know what, on balance, it did work out okay. There were some arrests, but not many. So both protest groups had their say.
Well, 10 people arrested probably won't agree with that. My thoughts on that, my thoughts on this would be, they could have been stopped, said, we're not going to let you any closer. Obviously, the police could liaise with whoever the head of the other protest group was. Come back tomorrow, we'll put you in a proper place, properly policed with more officers, because by letting these people in to the already established peaceful protest, you're infringing someone else's rights to protest by allowing another group in.
Yeah, you're intimidating, you're potentially intimidating people, deliberately intimidating a group of people.
Yeah, and the last ex-officer said that, he wouldn't normally stop that group meeting the other ones because it might escalate. Well, if it did escalate when you're telling them they can't get any closer, you've only got one group to deal with. If you're then escorting them to the other group and you know that this is going to instigate a disorder, you've then got two groups to deal with. So your officers have got twice as much work to do.
Yeah.
And a bigger disorder.
I suppose the conclusion at one level to this is that it's not easy being the copper in charge.
It's not easy, but there's legislation there to prevent that. I think it could have been prevented. And, you got to ask why it happened. I think were the priorities wrong of the police on the day? Was it more of supporting everyone's right to protest, or was there an element of, if this goes off, then we can apply for the dispersal order? Because I'm sure you're aware the dispersal order gives police more powers to remove people from protest, prevents them coming back for 48 hours. And I'd hope that wouldn't be the case, but I just think it was totally wrong, and I think there was existing legislation that police could have used to prevent any disorder and allow the peaceful process to continue.
You said it brilliantly, Steve. Thank you very much. That's Steve in Redditch with his views on that. It is kind of curious, isn't it? Because you could say, well, look, here was an obvious situation. I think some of the arrests, by the way, weren't necessarily connected to the fact there were two protest groups. I think, I'm willing to be corrected on that, I think they were for mostly other obviously connected to the protest things, not people who, they discovered, that's Mick over there who got an iffy insurance certificate or something. It wasn't that, but you take my point. And it is tricky. But then, from one angle, this was always going to be potentially could have been a riot, OK? So wouldn't you have said, well, they got there first, in the same way that if there was a sort of pro-refugee group protesting and another group came along and said, look, we fundamentally and intellectually happen to believe that levels of immigration are unsustainable in this country, they're not affordable in this country, and therefore ultimately destructive in this country, and we'd like to protest. Now, the police might well say, well, yeah, but maybe not now because this is the wrong time to be protesting. Well, they would say, well, no, we need to protest to show that these pro-migration people are not the voice of Britain. So you get into free speech and you get into police state and you get into senior officers' abilities to call in certain laws at certain times. I know it's not easy. When you dissect it, it is not easy. But there's still something, does it pass the smell test? And there's, I think, one of the issues. Just a word from Lorraine on Oscar, our previous guest, looking at the stories at the beginning of the hour. Oscar, former advisor to Boris Johnson. Lorraine says, Oscar fails to read the room and falls into the typical I know better stance of both Conservatives and Labour with regards to Farage. Nigel spoke very clearly and openly about the policing of Epping. He spoke about what the public experienced and can all see. Nigel understands the common person. He does not sit in the ivory tower gaslighting and undermining us all. The more the Tories and Labour attack everything he does, the more will be drawn to reform. That's true, but I would say this, what I said to Oscar. If Nigel Farage was Prime Minister tomorrow, he would not change anything about how that was policed yesterday. In fact, he would sit down with the top cops. He's very pro-police, Nigel Farage, and they would explain to him why this is the tactic that's used. And I don't think fundamentally Nigel Farage's position would have changed. That said, he's in opposition MP and a leader of a party that's doing very well. He's got all the right in the world to say what he said. I disagree with Oscar that he shouldn't have said it. I think Oscar was saying, as a politician, he shouldn't have said it, not because of free speech, but a bloke that wants to be PM might find himself eating his own words in a couple of years. 0344 499 1000, just gone 2:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Let's just move on to another story here, which I know will grab your interest as well. The UK could be sued over its contribution to climate change after a court ruling that countries are responsible for their emissions. Don't get too bothered, though. This is the International Court of Justice. Said nations must comply with climate treaties, and failing to do so breaches international law. Well, what are they going to do? Jail the government? While the ruling isn't legally binding, it's expected to influence laws worldwide and could open the floodgates to lawsuits against countries like the UK. That's going to be where it gets tricky. Ben Pyle, writer and co-founder of Climate Debate UK, is with us. Always helps us out on these kind of stories. Not legally binding, but could be a pain in the backside. Ben, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Yeah, I think that it's a symbolic act.
Yeah.
And what we know is, you know, the kind of international community, as they like to call themselves, is all about symbols and sending messages and sort of essentially writing letters to Santa Claus about the world they want to create. Certainly, they would love nothing more than for there to be a world court which could instruct governments.
Yeah.
And this has been a long time in the making. Global NGOs and very wealthy philanthropists who are really quite hooked on this idea have pumped hundreds and perhaps billions of dollars into lobbying governments and intergovernmental agencies like the United Nations and the European Union to try and get this to turn this into a fact of international politics and international environmental politics, especially. So they really want there to be a court, and they really want it to have teeth, and they want that power also at the national level. And the reason they want it is because the democratic argument has been lost. They haven't won the support of electorates pretty much anywhere in the world, minus one or two places. People aren't voting for it. And of course, if a government such as the UK said tomorrow we're going to ban cars because of climate change and all the rest of it, I don't need to spell it all out, then they would be voted out, which they're probably going to be anyway at the first opportunity the electorate has given them. So the reason to try and sort of to create this kind of legal structure, this ambition for using the law in this way, which we've seen in many areas, not just in climate, is because those centres of power are pretty much weakening, and so they need to find a way around democracy, and putting democracy underneath a court is of course the right answer. Well, not the right answer, is their solution. So there was a very interesting precedent for this case, if I may go on, and that last year the European Court of Human Rights found that Switzerland had breached the human rights of a group of older women. And it said that they had breached, I think, their right to a private and family life. And that is because these women, according to these women's legal complaint, which they take into the Swiss courts and then they take into the European Court of Human Rights, some of them felt that they couldn't really walk to the supermarket or the swimming pool when there was a heat wave. Right.
So they were blaming climate change on this.
Yeah, I mean, when you hear about the court case, you think there's probably people have died, people have drowned, people have have been all the polar bears or something, but no, these were people who just felt a little bit uncomfortable in the summer months.
Because it was, I mean, these are professional nut jobs, right? I mean, that's kind of that they agitate in their spare time and sometimes in their full time.
No, that's right. And the court case, the case was actually paid for by Greenpeace, and it was Greenpeace's lawyers from green billionaire philanthropists taking this to the European Court. Now, what I find the most interesting thing about this case was Swiss democracy is probably what everyone who's listening to us now in the UK really wants. It's a direct form of democracy, and if there's a contentious issue that the government needs clarity on, it takes it to a referendum. And so the Swiss climate law was the subject of a referendum, and everyone said, we think we've gone far enough on cutting our emissions, we don't want to go any further, thank you very much. And that is what prompted Greenpeace to go out, find some older women, and then launch this complaint to literally circumvent democracy. The Swiss government, fortunately, and good for them, said, well, we're not having any of that. And this was a year ago, and they still haven't implemented what the European Court of Human Rights has dictated. And I think many people would like that approach here on pretty much everything that comes out of that court. So this relates to the new International Court of Justice in these very obvious ways. This is all about NGOs trying to stick one over against democratically appointed governments.
There is a sense, I mean, the example you gave about the women trying to sue because the country had the audacity to experience summer. There's likely to be more of that then, isn't there, under this? Because you can just see some of those lawyers sharpening their quills, thinking, so we've now got a bit of, at least legal protection or camouflage over, as wacky and as batty as some of these ideas are, we can at least rest on the fact, look, these judges, these sort of United Nations appointed boffins have just decreed that there could be a legal case here, to almost bolster their credibility, even though it ultimately doesn't mean anything very much at all. It will be utilised in order to sort of inflame and increase these kind of lawsuits.
Absolutely. I think one of the dangers is, I mean, there might be some good reasons for international or intergovernmental agencies and courts to discuss really serious matters, not frivolous stuff like the Swiss case. But by allowing these sort of intergovernmental agencies to be colonized by green ideology, they've weakened the foundations of those institutions, because everyone listening to this would read the Swiss court's judgment and so on and go, this is absolutely ridiculous. This is going to be imposed on millions and millions of people. It's going to cost billions and trillions of pounds or whatever, and it's kind of frivolous and silly. So it's like the ECHR's judgments against the UK. It's created a massive groundswell of support in the UK for us to withdraw from that court, which may or may not have been created for good reasons.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is very dangerous that the United Nations should allow itself and its agencies to be colonized in that way, and it's kind of regrettable, and I think it may lead to a worsening of relationships between countries rather than, as the Greens think, this sort of consolidation of power and politics.
Indeed, and of course, ultimately, it can just be ignored, as we say. Maybe for the moment, you're absolutely right. Ben, great to have you on with us, as always. Ben Pyle, writer, co-founder of Climate Debate UK. Another gear shift in the evangelism of this particular debate, now with some legal camouflage. Frank says, Frank is in West Yorkshire, in lovely Bingley, who says, I disagree with you that Nigel Farage would have allowed the policing of the Bell demos to go ahead as it did. Firstly, there wouldn't be any migrants in the hotel. Well, that's true. And second, well, or is it? And secondly, allowing the police to shepherd pro-migration activists to the demo scene would definitely have been stopped. Also, Nigel Farage would have certainly attended the scene, unlike Starmmer. Well, he could do that. I'm not aware that he has as yet, but he could do that. And I know how we kind of project things and how we sort of want to see things. There are some, there's some realities about how these things happen. And if you're in opposition, we see it every time governments switch, where stuff that the opposition party got really, really angry about, we're going to sort this out, we're having none of this old nonsense. We played Yvette Cooper earlier, getting really angry about crime rates in the UK. And here she is, over a year now, into the job as Home Secretary, and the whole thing's got worse. And in fact, not only has it got worse, it's not as if she's got a great policy that has yet to trickle down, and then we'll give her the benefit of the doubt when we see it. There is no policy. There's nothing here. So that shoplifting, endemic crime all over the place, and migrants and hotel, absolutely nothing has come from them. It is interesting how the status quo so often remains. And nobody can predict what Nigel Farage might do if he was the Prime Minister tomorrow, but certainly when it comes to the police escorting people from other groups, that is not new. That is not new at all. And it happens across the spectrum. We just don't hear about it very often. It could be ill-advised, and I think, certainly in a case such as this, it would be ill-advised. And look, we live in a democracy. You're meant to have free speech. I'm not saying it's easy, but I think on that particular one, that would be argued fairly reasonably that it wasn't perhaps the greatest decision made by the top cop over there in Essex. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
There is absolutely no excuse on this earth for why we are where we are 1 year into more than a year into a new government. This administration had plenty of time to prepare proper solutions to stop the boats. What's happened, in fact, as everybody knows, is that there's been a multiplier. Instead of stopping the boats, even more than ever are coming over. And for the government now to say, oh gosh, you know, things are looking a little bit hairy.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is the voice of doom, by the way. This is the mystery voice bit, where you're always looking for the voice of usually a politician or somebody so obviously connected to the world of politics that it's in that ballpark, but usually a politician. So it's a bit of a stinker, this one. In fact, I know I say this every time, I do sense this one might go on for years. Here's the voice.
I certainly have things to say.
It's not Ian Duncan Smith, I can tell you. There is a little bit of Duncan Smith about that. There's a tonal kind of nod to Sir Ian. Have another listen.
I certainly have things to say.
Who is that? If you think you know, don't be phoning in, for goodness sake, because we haven't got any prizes at this end. You can message in if you fancy taking part. 87222. Start your message with the word talk and all that detail. We'll tell you after the news if we get a right answer, but if not, it rolls over. Here it is again.
I certainly have things to say.
I'd be absolutely banjaxed if anyone came up with the right answer to that, like now. One more listen.
I certainly have things to say.
He certainly has things to say, but who the heck is it? I say he, could be a she, who knows? Let's go back to the calls. Jackie is in Dorset. What have you got for us, Jackie? Good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm absolutely enraged with Keir Starmer. I mean, he's been in power for over a year now, and he's had ample opportunity to do something about the illegal immigrants. And he's done absolutely nothing. In fact, there's more coming in now than there ever has been.
Correct.
And I know I'm not alone in my feelings. I know I'm not alone. Why don't we do something proactive? Why don't we get, you know, we're paying millions to France, absolutely millions to France, to stop these boats coming over.
Yep.
Why don't we do something proactive? Get the Marines out there. The Marines will stop them. The Marines will stop them. Why do the Border Force boats have to tow them in every, you know...
Apparently it's the law of the sea. You can't stop a boat halfway and then try and turn it back. Well, I'm not defending that position, by the way. That seems to be the argument.
No, but what about this land? What about England? He's turning this country into an Islamic state. He's turning it...
Listen, Jackie, your phone line, I'm not cutting you off. I know conspiracy theories will say you are. You're not saying anything that many people haven't said before, and I agree with you. Jackie, thank you, but your line just completely mashed up at the end there. Maybe the intelligence authorities didn't want it heard. Or maybe it was the head of Essex Police that made a phone call and got you scrambled live on air. Joanna in Salisbury says, oh my God, climate reparations, not legally binding like the Chagos Islands. Don't tell Starmer. Yeah, it's kind of that. I am going to complain that my life has been irredeemably damaged by climate, and I'm now going to sue the government, and I've got the backing of, you know, an international court that will say, yeah, you should be allowed to do that. I should have known better. Shouldn't they at least have said, right, it's not retrospective? Any law on this. That might have helped. Mel is in Essex. How you doing, Mel?
I'm very, very good, thank you, Ian.
Good.
How are you?
I'm all right. Are you near the melee, Mel?
Quite near, yeah. I guess we're 15, 20 minutes away.
Okay.
But we've passed the offending hotel on many, many occasions with question marks in our minds.
What are you making of what we're seeing? Where does all of this end?
That's a question I regularly ask myself, Ian, and I'm quite astute, and I wouldn't say I'm a political expert, but generally, historically, I've been able to see a point where we reach equilibrium, and you go, we need to get there, and things become better. And the current situation, I'm absolutely bereft of comment. I think we're led by a political class that thinks the normal working people in the UK are knuckle draggers and gammons.
Sure.
And as long as that continues, the melee that we're seeing will continue, if not get worse.
And that's the problem, isn't it? Because when we have these protests, the only thing, as far as I can tell, Mel, we've heard from the Prime Minister, is that these are, OK, not on the Essex. I think he stopped short on the Essex protest, but previously he's talked about far-right thugs.
And how divisive is that?
It's horrendously divisive.
What
it's
does it
also
say
completely inaccurate.
What does it say to the majority of people in working class? You don't matter.
That's exactly what it says.
We don't represent
It's
you.
exactly that. And even if you talk to sort of normally normal middle-class people, they'll go, yeah, OK, they're not, you know, not everybody's kicking off, but underneath it all, they probably are far-right. You get that response, and I think the government kind of know that, so they're sort of hoping that that's how it will, that's how it will sell out.
As one of your previous commentators said, I think that they're appealing to the people that don't read the press, pay little attention to current affairs, and when they banned everybody far-right, thuggish, that mad people, it's kind of more widely accepted, but it is so divisive. And, I've been involved in local politics, and I can tell you, Ian, the majority of people that I speak to feel disenchanted. They feel abandoned, they've got no political hope, and they feel that nobody currently in politics represents them.
And we're being charged £8 million a day to keep this absolute shower of shoddy clowns, enabling them to carry out these weird policies of hotels. I mean, it's an economic argument as much as anything else, Harry, right?
More than anything, more than anything. But one of the points I made to the chap that answered the phone, Ian, was, can you imagine if I've always been taught in mediation, the best thing to do is assume the position of the person you're opposing.
Yep.
And for 1 minute, I ask your listeners to put themselves in the position of these counter-protesters, of these Antifa demonstrators, and having seen what's gone on in Epping, where it is it's unquestionable bias by the police at the very, very best, where, OK, I accept they may not have bussed them to the location, but they've certainly escorted them. Your previous commentator said that, in reality, the police don't have the resources to ask them to remove their masks.
Yeah, without a special order or something.
Where does that lead? If they come along with truncheons or batons, do the police have the resources to ask them?
Well, I think wearing a mask is intimidating. I think it's asking for trouble as well. I mean, I would argue that it's all of those things. You look as if you're tooled up, ready to go. Listen, Mel, I've got to move on for no other reason than time. I was going to mention something else there as well, and it's annoying, is it, when it just escapes your memory? Harry's in Portsmouth. Harry, good afternoon.
Oh yes, hello, Ian. This police business in Essex, I'm reminded, of course, what's going on here. I'm reminded, of course, of the Sheffield Stadium event, 40 years ago now, just about. They finally got the inquiry through, and what at the time the police said it was nothing to do with them. It was all denied, because some stupid local MP said some comment, and then in the end the Liverpool community know.
You're talking about Hillsborough.
That's it. I've walked to Hillsborough, so I should know. But yeah, the fans were misdirected. The Liverpool fans were misdirected, I think, into a wrong part of the stadium. I'm not a football fan, so you've got a better memory than me. And that's when the disaster happened, because the police who were in charge of safety, the big S word, safety first, misdirected them.
Well, wasn't it the famous line of "open the gate" or something of that order, which allowed too many people to filter in?
it was just totally misdirected. They opened the wrong gates, let the wrong crowd in, and they've always been careful before, and especially since. But on the Essex thing, if you know the Stand Up to Racism crowd may have some rowdies in there, just like a football crowd.
Yeah, well, that was the point. That's the bit I forgot. I was trying to think what I was going to mention. Yes, if you want to talk about extremists, if the Prime Minister wants to talk about extremists, he'll find loads of them in that group.
Yeah, there's no problem for MI5 to locate.
No, I mean, it almost dines out on extremism, irrational thinking and a rather bizarre virtue signalling, vacuous belief system. Harry, I've got to step in because we've hit the clock. You've been great. Thank you. 0344 499 1000. Voice of Doom. Who is this?
I certainly have things to say.
87222 if you think you know. Hopefully we can tell you on the other side of the news at 3, which is next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, welcome back. It is the Afternoon Empire. We are, of course, the home of common sense. We're talking about the police being pulled from neighbourhood duties to manage migrant protests, big fears of summer chaos. Where does this all end? How does the migrant crisis end? Now you've got top-notch 400 quid a night hotels being used, funded by the taxpayer, to house people who literally should not be here. 7-8 million quid a day. Can you really, with a straight face, say we can afford this? Of course we can't. Also this afternoon, the White House says reports that Donald Trump was told in May he was among hundreds of names in Justice Department documents related to convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein are fake news. there's a lot of fakery going around this, but this is not the best look for Donald Trump in not releasing whatever these files look like. I'm not even sure they exist in the way some people think so. We'll have more on that. Millions of Brits will be blocked from adult content online, including some social media sites, at midnight tonight, unless they pass booze-style age checks. Oh, how's this one going to ramp up? And be careful, by the way. I mean, if you're a teenager looking at what would be seen as legalised, legit porn, and you nick your dad's credit card or his driving licence to flash it on the screen or whatever the heck you do, your old man might end up doing a stretch, so be careful. 0344 499 1000 is where you'll find us. Let's just quickly do the voice of doom. I'm hopeful we've got an answer to this. I didn't think we would, but maybe we have. This is the voice you were set to charge with identifying.
I certainly have things to say.
These are some of the guesses: Michael Foot, Michael Gove, Christopher Chataway, Malcolm Rifkin, Nicholas Soames, Damien Green. None of those. One here, Rachel Reeves with a sore throat. Can I hear it again, Sam?
I certainly have things to say.
It's got something of the Rachel Reeves about her. So if it was a little bit more tearful, it could have been her. Michael Heseltine, no. Jeffrey Archer, no. In fact, we don't have, as predicted, a correct answer, which means it rolls over to tomorrow. Good luck with that. It is radio's most compelling, addictive quiz. Is it a quiz or is it a feature? Well, there's no prize, we know that much. Just the credibility of winning. 0344 499 1000. 5 minutes after 3 o'clock. Let's move to this Jeffrey Epstein story. The White House says it's not true that President Trump was told in May that his name was in Justice Department papers about convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Trump's team has been pressured to share more details about Epstein, who Trump said he used to know but stopped being friends with back in 2004. When running for president last year, Trump promised to release the files. Let's speak with our friend Michael Graham, our man in Washington, US political commentator, managing editor of Inside Sources, a man always with his ear to the ground, of course, on these issues. Michael, good afternoon. Can I give you, I don't know whether to finish with this or start with this, but my basic theory is that there's a lot of confusion around this. Somebody's been posting me a couple of photographs this afternoon of Epstein meeting Peter Mandelson, who's now the UK ambassador to the USA. Or was it the USA ambassador? Yeah, him. Anyway, fellow that now lives in Washington. Now, of course, when Jeffrey Epstein wasn't offending, he was, running massive multi-billion-dollar businesses. So the idea that anyone who ever met him ever in their life is somehow connected to him in a nefarious way is clearly nonsense. And the idea that there's somehow a hit list, bullet point style, of all these people. If you went to his island, like if you went to anybody else who owns an island, you probably went there for legit reasons most of the time. And that's the problem we're facing here, isn't it? People are now adding names as to who might be on it.
Well, so Donald Trump has a really interesting story because they were both wealthy in New York City and West Palm Beach. So they were in the same social circles quite a bit back in the day. And apparently Epstein engaged in some behavior at Mar-a-Lago that annoyed Trump, and Trump had him thrown out. So that's one thing they have. But I mean, a couple of things about the story. First of all, when you said early in your setup that this isn't a good look for Donald Trump, no, what's a really bad look for Donald Trump is that haircut you were just showing on the screen. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
From the 1980s Business in the Front Party in the back. Oh, my God. That was terrifying looking. Yes. There it is.
There it is.
That is not a good look.
It's funny. It's changed color as well. How does that happen?
And then the second thing is, my default on the entire Trump Epstein story has always been this: if there was ever anything that a Democrat could use to get Trump from the Epstein story, we would already know it by now. It would already be in a movie. It would be on, I mean, remember, Democrats got someone to commit a felony and release Trump's personal tax records. Yeah. And a newspaper published them, which normally they would never do. But that's how much people in the United States, the people who hate Trump, truly hate him.
I mean, that's Watergate style, right?
My point is that if there's anything out there, remember, Epstein was first arrested when George W. Bush was president. And he's been in and out of trouble after that. So you had 8 years of the Obama administration, 4 years of the Biden administration, and people were sitting on this, quote, file with, evidence that Donald Trump was a pedophile or something, and they didn't release it. If the evidence were there, it would have long been out.
Absolutely. So what is what is your assessment then, Michael, as to, what I mean, I'm wondering whether a file in the sense that social media are asking for, I wonder whether it even exists.
Well, there have been references in the past. People have said, I've seen the file. And so the question is, what did they mean? Did they mean Jeffrey Epstein's file, his little black book of here's where, Andrew, Prince, or whatever, I don't know what, or do they mean the FBI file? Because the FBI has a file on a lot of people. And have they seen that? And so that's the question. The notion that there's some kind of Dr. Evil, listing of people and who they were with and what time they were on the plane and landing on the island, that seems far-fetched to me. But the real problem for Donald Trump is this is the first issue that has hurt him with his base. And I just saw an extensive analysis of polling that shows that Trump's numbers among Republicans, even though they're wildly high, are not, they used to be crazy high, like 90% approval, 92% approval of the Republicans. Now it's down to 85, 82%. And when you're a guy who's only got the support of a third of independents, you need your party on board 100%. And there are a lot of people who are part of the MAGA movement specifically because of conspiracies. They think that government is basically one big conspiracy, and that's why they sent Trump in, is to bust up the conspiracies, to throw back the light, whatever. And here you have this one remaining dark corner. It stands out. Yeah,
and he made a big thing about it. I'll release those files. And, you do wonder whether he was, perhaps they're waiting for the files and, some underling came into the Oval Office with a bit of A4 in his hand, and the president said, "Do you want somebody to help you with the boxes?" And he said, "No, there is no boxes, but it's just this. That's all it is." He was a wrong 'un. He did bad stuff. He had some help with his assistant, and that's all we really know. And could it be that?
Look, it could be that. It also could be a judge in Florida was, the Federal Department of Justice, Trump's people went down and said, release the relevant grand jury testimony. Grand jury testimony is secret for a reason, because you want people to be able to talk openly, speculate, whatever, just give the whole sense of what happened, and then the grand jurors go, there's enough here to go forward with an official trial, or you know what, this is nothing here. So you want it to be secret. And so the judge said, look, I can't release this. This is our grand jury system. We're not going to break it because this, hideous story of Epstein and the fact that tabloid magazines want to cover it. So Trump is running into I have no idea how much he really wants to release. I have no idea what he knows. Is there some embarrassing photo that just separate from any crimes just makes him look bad? I don't know. All I know is we do not have a system in America where you can just dump investigatory product, particularly on a case involving allegations of sex with minor children, out into the public. We do that for a reason, and it's not about the bad guys. It's about the children and the accusers. You just don't dump their information out there.
And what's interesting about this is that, of course, as I said at the beginning, Michael, before all of this was known about Epstein, and he was just a very successful, like a kind of, as you say, a parallel Donald Trump character. He was very rich, very successful, liked to party, globe-trotted around the world in private jets and all the rest of it. He would have been surrounded by people from the world of politics, from the world of show business, entertainment, media. Everybody would have pressed the flesh with him at some point. That wouldn't have been unusual in itself. I guess, in a way, though, the counter to my argument is that the only person who's in jail, apparently for industrial-scale abuse, is a woman who apparently helped him procure some of the girls. Now, what I find interesting about that, we understand that, various law enforcement agencies are going to be speaking with Ghislaine Maxwell in jail. Are they going to cut a deal with her? You give us the names and we'll give you a nice house in Montana for the rest of your life where you won't, or in fact, we'll probably just deport you back to the UK, let them deal with it. Whatever the case is. It was odd at the time that during the entire court case, she wasn't screaming from the rafters, hang on a second, why am I here on my own? Where's all the other people? She never said that, and neither did her lawyers.
No, it's very interesting, and apparently no attempt was made to say anything like that or to leverage what she knew. So maybe there's no there, or maybe she's still protecting people. I don't know. I will say, she's British, right?
Yeah. So you think she was being polite?
What's the deal? No. What's the deal with Ghislaine? We still can't pronounce her name. She's been in the news for 20 years. Yes. I cannot pronounce her name. What the heck?
It took me every time until, I think today is the first time I pronounced it properly.
This is not like Siobhan in the Irish with the
No, I don't know where it's from.
Okay.
Her old man was from interesting stock, so maybe there's something in that, and he jumped off a yacht years ago.
If they put her in if she reveals all, and they put her in the witness relocation program, I hope they name her Jane Smith. Just for revenge to solve this problem.
Absolutely right. Well, we're going to wait with interest. I mean, is there anything we attach, or how important is this meeting that might take place between her and whether it's the FBI, whoever it happens to be, that are apparently going to go and talk to her? Is there much in that, or is that, again, social media supposition?
So, in politics, usually people who follow it, like sports fans follow it, we can kind of predict what ballpark we're in. This story, I cannot predict it. Look, we already have a guy who did or did not hang himself, where we had the video released, except, it turns out there were minutes of the video missing. We already have this Ghislaine person who was hiding in New Hampshire at a farmhouse, who now suddenly is in prison. I got no idea. If you told me tomorrow that there was a movie of top 10 American millionaires all engaged in a scene out of a porn film with people throwing fruit on them, or if you told me that there's literally nothing, that this was all just a nothing burger, I could go either way. And that's another reason why this remains. It's hard to tell the story in your mind as a voter and a person who follows politics. Yeah. So I've got no idea.
Yeah, we're going to watch with interest. There is, of course, a new social media appetite, isn't it, about files dropping. This phrase that it was never a thing a little while ago. I think, do you remember, the Pfizer files are going to drop after COVID. We're waiting for the
Steele
Pfizer
dossier. Remember the Steele dossier?
Indeed, all of that. And then, people in that
world. And what do they all have in common? Britain. There's always a British connection. That's the problem. By the way, I have to tell you, the name of your show, this afternoon Empire thing, I find the word empire microaggressing me. I'm an American. We had to fight to escape your empire. I don't think I need another British empire.
Well, we were going to call it the Boston Blowout. So just to go full pelt. I thought that might tick the box nicely. Listen, let's talk about Obama because there's been an accusation. Donald Trump accusing Obama of treason. Let's have a little listen to the president on this very point.
Got it.
The leader of the gang was President Obama, Barack Hussein Obama. Have you heard of him? And except for the fact that he gets shielded by the press for his entire life, that's the one they... Look, he's guilty. It's not a question. I like to say, let's give it time. It's there. He's guilty. This was treason. This was every word you can think of. They tried to steal the election. They tried to obfuscate the election. They did things that nobody's ever even imagined, even in other countries. President Obama, it was his concept, his idea, but he also got it from crooked Hillary Clinton. Crooked is a $3 bill.
I take crooked as a $3 bill. You see, Trump just has a degree, doesn't he, in saying hugely controversial things in the most casual way, which makes it more powerful. And it's like he's so kind of, laid back about making the most seismic accusations. But that's what he said. There was a lead up to a coup, and Barack Obama's paw prints were all over it.
The story of the 2016 election, everything is just it would take us an hour to get through it. But I do think one thing is there's a new information, at least for me, which is before the election, there's all kinds of intel saying, yes, Russia's screwing with it. They're doing Facebook things, whatever. They hate Hillary and they're trying to sow chaos. After Trump won, there was this magical sudden shift to Russia was involved, and they tried to help Trump. And there was collusion, and they were working together. And Putin always planned to put Trump in the White House. That was a complete reverse almost overnight. Yeah. And Obama was in a meeting where that talk about the story and putting Trump in the narrative as opposed to just they hate Hillary and Russia hates us. That's a thing. And they have these things called the presidential daily briefings. And Trump, once he became the nominee, or excuse me, the president-elect, was supposed to get them. One day, they didn't publish one.
Ooh.
And the day was the day of that meeting where Obama was part of a conversation about the story is changing from they just screwed with our election to there was a deal between Putin and Trump. And of course, that storyline really made the first 18 months of Trump's presidency a mess. I mean, it was clearly designed to hurt him politically. I think none of this is illegal. It's all people behaving horribly. I also think President Obama is going to be one of those people whose reputation, which is already sinking, continues to sink. I think 50 years from now, Obama's going to have a reputation that has dropped more than any other sitting president in the modern era, from when he was in office, where he was wildly popular, to people looking back going, he was really not a very good president, was he?
Yeah, I think you might be right about that. Listen, Michael, on that point, we finish. But thank you, as ever. He is Michael Graham, our man on Capitol Hill. He's also, of course, managing editor of Inside Sources. Thank you to him. What are you making of that? Again, some of this is fueled by social media. The list, where's the list? I don't imagine for 1 second there is a specific list, almost 1 to 100 or 1 to 500, 1 to 10, whatever, of these are the people that actually had illegal sex against underage girls, or sex against the people trafficking, sex against people, whatever it is. I just cannot imagine any scenario when I've looked at this story and I've tried to, it can get sort of multi-layered, this story, but I just can't see there being a list. I can imagine there's some suspicion. Oh, look, this person went to, stay with him for X amount of time. It also coincided at a time when a young girl was sent to. There might be something like that, and it might be a confused, sometimes contradictory list. But if you're going to produce a list of anyone that went to his private island or went on his plane, there's going to be thousands of people. Because remember, like any criminal, whether they are a sexual deviant like this man, whether they are a person who turned out to be a fraudster, whatever, prior to knowing about their crimes, as far as most people knew, they were just legit. They liked to party. He was rich. He was a raconteur, loved and stay up all night, blah, blah. So anyone that met him is probably written down on a list somewhere, if that's what they've collated. That is not in itself a suggestion they did anything wrong. And I don't know how anyone's going to get around that. But it does bring me back to what I just said to Michael Graham. It is really odd that the only person in prison, bearing in mind we were told, industrial scale, VIP sex ring, and the only person in jail is a posh British woman and no one else. A woman. No other bloke is in jail for any of these crimes. Will she cut a deal of some sort? Will there be anything to negotiate with? Has she actually got any information? Or is it going to be pretty much as I just outlined it? Yeah, you had some parties. There's not as many people went there as you think they did. And not as many offences as you think there would have been. 0344 499 1000. We're back with more from you coming next on Talk.
There is absolutely no excuse on this earth for why we are where we are 1 year into more than a year into a new government. This administration had plenty of time to prepare proper solutions to stop the boats. What's happened, in fact, as everybody knows, is that there's been a multiplier. Instead of stopping the boats, even more than ever are coming over. And for the government now to say, oh gosh, you know, things are looking a little bit hairy.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This one in with no name given. Ian, what resources does a policeman need to deal in the first instance with a protester wearing a mask? Not much. A knowledge of the law and a tongue in his head. If the offender won't do as they are asked, then what happens next? Not necessarily in the immediate moment. Depends on the persistence of the police and the will of the people. You can bet your life that if the policeman isn't of risible stature, the culprit will do as asked. True. But they don't have to ask somebody to remove a face covering. Which, I mean, you can have a special... As I understand it, as was explained to us by Graham Whettone earlier, you can get... There's something within the law that allows the police to insist on a mask being removed in certain situations, but you've got to have that okayed by a top cop. Or, as many of you have pointed out, if you believe that a person is, or a group, is likely to inflame the possibility of criminality, then there could be a problem. Something like that. So apparently it's all a bit ambiguous to some of us. Not so, but you take the point. So I find it odd that you're allowed to just turn up at a protest and start sort of lobbing things, but you're completely masked up, so nobody knows who the hell you are. Michael's in Southend on this issue of protest. Michael, what have you got for us? Hi.
Sorry, Ian, it wasn't about that. It was about the migrant crisis, really.
That's all right, no problem at all.
But has anybody thought of this one? I mean, at the moment, the migrants have got it pretty good. They come over here and they get free food, free hotels, phones, £50 a week, spending money, work on the black in the black economy for Deliveroo or Just Eat. They get free football tickets, driving licences or driving lessons, the front of the queue for the doctors, etc. Has anybody thought that in a few years' time, inevitably, it's all going to stop? Someone with a backbone is going to get into this country and stop this all happening. Once they've stopped the boats coming over and they've stopped these illegal immigrants coming in, how do you think the illegal immigrants are going to, or all the immigration is going to do that? When they've had everything taken away from them, how do you think they're going to react to it? Because tell you now, they're not averse to picking up a machete or a knife or whatever, and it's only going to end in either civil war, anarchy.
Well, all I would say, Michael, is that most of us, the average immigrant wants just to get a job and live here.
Well, with respect,
I don't know how many. I don't know what kind of job you get when you probably don't speak very good English. So I don't know on that point alone. I don't know when
people have had all this stuff given to them, they will consider that we turned our backs on them. And then I just think, oh, hell will be let loose. They're not going to react in the way that we do. They're not going to be having peaceful demonstrations. When you see what...
Well, that's always a possibility, isn't it? I mean, I don't know, I don't know what, in terms of who gets what. I don't know how much you really get as a migrant. I mean, I wouldn't want to live on it, 30-odd quid a week.
No, neither would I. But I just think when these politicians come in, they better have a backup plan.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely bang on. I mean, to me, just the sheer, and you've touched on it there, the sheer cost of this is one of the most powerful arguments against it, right? I mean, the 7-8 million quid a day, regardless of what people think of individuals or certain countries or certain religions, whatever, the sheer cost of it is the most powerful argument of the problem here, along with social cohesion. Because I don't understand what, when people go, well, diversity is our strength. And, it sounds like a very worthy thing to say. And I'm not saying diversity is our weakness. What I'm saying is I don't know if you could demonstrably prove that it's a strength, that your world somehow improves because you make it more diverse in terms of where people come from.
I think that diversity is our weakness, but a lot of people will think of it as our strength. It's the same as me saying that my greatest strength is that I don't tell lies.
Well, I think, yes, indeed. Yeah.
But also my greatest weakness is I don't tell lies.
That's absolutely right. I mean, I think it's our weakness in the sense if you've got a social cohesion and, singing from a single hymn sheet and having a kind of a direction. Clearly, it's a weakness in this respect. Is it a strength in the sense that you or I could go and work in Spain and a Spaniard could come and work here? Yep, that would be the strength, but that's not the kind of immigration we're talking about, is it?
No, but my parents lived in Spain for 12 years.
Yeah.
And my dad used to come and pick me up from the airport when I would go and visit. And it was only after a couple of times he'd been there that he had notes put on his car. We see this car here again picking up people and we will trash your car, because they are not having English moving in over there and taking their jobs from them. In Spain, if there's a job going and there could be four English people and one Spaniard, the Spaniard's always going to get that job.
Sure, but then, of course, you could say, certain parts of Spain, down the Costa del Sol, that entire strip has only really succeeded and grown because of the British contingent there.
Yeah, and all the criminals live in there,
Well, there's a bit of that, isn't there? Let's keep Ronnie Biggs out of this. Both of us might get a knock at the door tonight, Michael. I'd run.
Yeah, you're right.
Great call, Michael. Thank you very much indeed for that. The bit that fascinates me on this at the moment is what is the most powerful argument that we can put to a government to get them to understand the anger. And I think it's economic. I also think it's social cohesion. Now, the security aspect is massive in this. Who are these people? In what world would you go, well, let's just bring 50,000 people a year into a country, no idea who they are, their background, their intention, don't even really know their name, they could just make one. I mean, literally no idea. By definition, we've got no idea at all. There's obviously a security concern about that. Why would there not be a security concern around that? But the issue is, how do you fend off the likes of Starmmer and possibly to a degree even Rishi Sunak when you're written off as a right-wing extremist, as a nutjob, a right-wing thug? So you have to find a way to kind of, like if this was a Netflix drama, there would be a scene where they go, right, we've tried exposing this issue, man's arrested for trying to kiss an underage girl, sexual offence. That is true, but does it define all of the people in that hotel? So if we say that, we're just going to be called right-wing nut. What's the most powerful argument that we can put to the government? And by the way, you shouldn't need a bloody powerful argument. It should be a very straight case of open your eyes and have a look at what's going on. It should be pretty obvious to anybody, but apparently not. So how can you best sell or impart the problem to the government and the Guardian reading intelligentsia, the metropolitan elite, if you like, people who just think that the minute you raise it, you're somehow a shaven-headed, tattoo-ridden, former National Front dodgepot, because that's how it's defined. What's the best argument to go against all of that? 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Sean Keach is back with us. Sorry about that, he just turned up. So, Head of Technology at the Science at the Sun. I apologise. We've got a lot of stories to look at here, but I do want to just ask you something, and you may or may not know the answer to this. And that is, why do we still have junk mail? Why do we still get bombarded when you would imagine right now, I get about half a dozen of these a day. They clearly probably come from the same place. They're either trying to sell me solar panels or health insurance or some pet care or something like that. And the email addresses they come from are clearly, they use almost every letter of the alphabet. And it says .eu or something at the end. And you think, how does the Apple algorithm not clock that and go, this is clearly rubbish?
It's a nightmare. There are so many problems with this. It's not just email either. It's text. You get it on the phone calls, and they're trying to fix it. There are new features coming out for iPhone later this year that are going to detect spam calls and warn you about them. Google has similar features for Android phones. So these companies are working on it, but it's so difficult because it's a game of cat and mouse, and they're constantly trying to evade the system. So I don't think you'll ever solve it.
But
really.
even it might just be able to put into the algorithm, right? If an email address looks like this, it's clearly not someone's, and if it's connected to flogging an item, it's definitely not someone's.
The Google system is actually quite interesting for texts, because if it thinks that you're having a text conversation with a scammer live in real time, it'll warn you. It'll come up with a little pop-up and say, we think this is a scammer, stop texting them, which I think is quite interesting, and that obviously uses AI. And so I think probably AI is the best chance of doing this, because it can pick up those signs that you're conversing with the scammer.
It would just eradicate
shut it down.
Scamming immediately, at some point.
But the scammers are using AI too. This is the problem. It's AI versus AI.
Yeah, there's a big battle here. Every now and again you get one that's clearly and demonstrably so badly written it is a scam. I mean, there's one, your cloud is about to expire. It's like my cloud. And then there's a sort of really badly drawn picture of a cloud, and it's written just clearly by some.
But the crooks are using, ChatGPT to craft these increasingly convincing emails now, and I think this is the problem, is that it's not just some random person in a third world country, that's in one of these bot farms trying to scam you. They're using AI to make it, perfect English, very convincing.
I get diesel vehicle claims. There's another one. Craft selection. Kate from Tails. That's not a true one. There's a carpet company.
What if they're real and you're missing out on millions, Ian? This is the problem.
That. Here's one. I've got solar funding. I can get this message has no content, so I can't read that one. Tesco shopper has a surprise for you. You want my money, you thieves, because it's not really from Tesco.
I had one that I nearly clicked on the other day, and I'm usually very cautious about this, but I had one saying that I'd bought a product that had been recalled from Amazon, and I buy a lot of stuff from Amazon. I was like, oh God, have I bought like a dodgy... Because also we write about recalls a lot too, exploding power banks, and I was like, oh, I bought something that's going to catch fire. I went to click it, and I had to stop myself, but it was the closest I've come to falling into the hands of the...
But if you just click it, is that, as long as you don't pursue it or put any information in, does that do anything, just clicking it? Does it tell them that you've acknowledged it?
It depends on the scam. So firstly, yes, it does tell them that you've acknowledged it, so then that can put you on the hit list because they know it's an active number.
Correct.
It's that same thing of when you answer the phone to unknown numbers, you're not supposed to speak straight away because then they know it's an active number. Wait for them to speak. So that is one thing. It depends if they found like a loophole in your operating system. So, like if it's iOS or Android or Windows or whatever it is, sometimes just clicking it is enough to put some malware on your device. Often what it is it'll just take you through to a website where it's designed to trick you into entering your login details. But sometimes just clicking is enough. So, I mean, be super, super careful. But it's hard, you're right. AI is being used to craft this stuff. It's very convincing. And
absolutely.
It nearly got me.
It nearly got you. Well, I got one the other day, and I've had it about 3 times this one, that my road tax is due. You've better fill out the forms to the DVLA. And the DVLA has a very interesting email address for the DVLA. It doesn't mention DVLA in it at all, and it just has these weird kind of bits of symbol and multiple letters. But
these are sophisticated. They can tell which types of scams people are clicking most. So it's almost like running a website. They're like, people are really interested in this. People are clicking this scam all the time. Let's do more of that. And so, you know, it's
I'm
very
never
difficult.
interested in paying road tax, even though I have to. So.
There you go.
Let's move to this story, though. Age verification has reached a new pivotal point, I think, tonight.
At midnight tonight, there's new rules that come into force, and it's basically going to force any website that's showing adult content. So that is pornography, but it's also anything that's sort of harmful in relation to self-harm or eating disorders or suicide. If that stuff, if you're running a social media site and that stuff is showing up, you need to check the age of people coming onto your website. And pornography sites will also need to do this too. So from midnight tonight, say you want to go onto one of the leading adult websites, you will be forced to verify your age. And that could be through a number of different ways. It could be showing your ID. It could be doing a scan of your face. It could be connecting your credit card so that they know you're 18. So a bunch of different ways to do this. Obviously, you know, this is going to set off privacy alarm bells for people.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't worry too much about that because the website themselves aren't seeing that information. So it's usually a third-party service. So I don't know if you've heard of Yoti. Yoti is one of these big services. It scans your face, estimates it. If it thinks you're an adult, it then passes a check back to the website that says, yes, this person is over 18. They don't know who you are. The website isn't keeping a log of, you know, who's adults and who's not. It's just a yes or no, is this person over 18?
So you couldn't just, if you're a teenage boy and want to look at some little titillation, legal stuff I'm talking about here, although it would be illegal if you weren't meant to look at it, but you take my point, you couldn't just grab your dad's driving licence and stick it
No,
on
because so if it's an ID situation like that, you will also have to do a face check, and it's usually a live face check. So what will happen is that you'll have to get your camera out and you'll have to sort of wiggle your head a little bit to show that you're a live person, so that you can't just, you know, hold up a picture of someone old and sneak through. I think that the way people are going to get around this are with VPNs, which, you know, a very popular type of app. A lot of people use it for illegal streaming. Yeah. So it's an app that it encrypts what you're doing online so that you know, you can't be spied on. But it has this other sort of perk that lets you trick your internet provider into thinking you're in a different country. So you could be from somewhere outside the UK, and people are going to use this to get around it. But Ofcom is hoping that this is a small number, and actually they're saying that the majority of people that are accidentally viewing adult content online are just doing it through websites like Twitter or X, you know, where they go on and it just shows up in their feed. And that's more of the thing that they want to crack down on, is this sort of accidental.
So this is porn, self-harm, those kind of websites.
And Ofcom is saying that around 6,000 websites, adult websites, pornography websites, have already agreed to do this, because obviously the rules kick in from midnight. But it's also websites like Reddit or you know, Twitter/X. You go into those and sometimes it shows up in your feed. That won't happen anymore. If you want to see adult content on Reddit, for instance, you will then have to verify yourself. So you'll still be able to get onto Reddit. You can still view all your, you know, cat memes or whatever. But if you want to view the adult side of that website, you will then have to age verify, or you'll be completely blocked from accessing it.
That's going to be interesting or worrying to some people. I'm just going to ask, and I'm only asking really for a friend, will funoctogenarians.com be affected by this?
You're going to have to verify your age for that, and you know, you might have to say you're 80, I don't know, to get on that website.
Yeah, it's devastating news. Let's move to this story. Ways people can save money with tech this summer. What's going on here?
So we have on the Sun Club membership scheme. It's full of exclusives, ways to save money. It's a brilliant membership scheme. It's a couple of quid a month, and we've been doing a Sun Club summer special series. It's about a dozen articles of loads of different ways you can save money over summer. Obviously, lots of people at home, you know, looking after kids, and so you know, you want to maximise your cash because it's you know, cost of living crisis. So as much money as you can save, and we've been coming up with loads of different ways that people can save money. And one of the main ways actually is checking your phone network rewards, because people really miss this stuff, all these deals and bundles and offers that you're already entitled to because you're paying for your mobile phone bill. So for instance, with 3+, which you know, 3 customers get, you can get £1 coffees, you can get £3 tickets to the cinema, 15% off clothes. If you're a Vodafone customer, you can get access to Very Me Rewards, which is a great app. You can get 50% off zoos and theme parks, so that's great if you've got kids. If you're an O2 customer, you can get free snacks from Greggs. Who doesn't love free snacks from Greggs? Brilliant. And if you've got Sky Cinema, which is you know, one of the add-ons for Sky TV, you can get a pair of free cinema tickets every month to view cinema, which actually is, you know, pretty good. You've got a mate, bring them along.
There must be, you know, there's people that go in for competitions almost professionally. They do it all the time. I think there used to even be a magazine, I'm sure there's more than one online, where you can just keep trying to win a car and all the rest of it. Obviously, it's collating data and there'll be some iffy ones out there, but there's bound to be people who really take the whole offer thing seriously and seek it out, because it's amazing. I went to buy something online. It was a jacket. This is about a year ago. And as I went to pay for it, it said, have you got a promotion code or something like that? So I went back to just the browser and I put in that company and wrote the word promotion code, and it came back with a code, and I chucked the code back into the thing, and there was about 25-30% off or something.
I think
I don't know where that.
But there's that crushing disappointment of when you go to do that and you can't find anything, and
there's
you're
no
like,
code,
and or you see like an expired code that expired a few days ago, and you're like, oh god,
all of
if
that,
only I'd just bought it a few days
But
earlier.
the point is, it's if you look for it, it's amazing actually what is out there, because you don't get much free these days.
There's a great app called Olio, which basically is like a hyper-local finding free stuff in your neighborhood. So, you know, someone's got some bread that's about to go off that they're not going to get through, or someone's baked a load of cookies for a party and they've got spare cookies, and so you can pick stuff up. It's meant to be on your street or down the road. There's another app called Too Good To Go, which is more for supermarkets trying to get rid of some of their stuff on the cheap, you know, if it's about to go out of date, which is really good, you know, reduce food waste. You usually get a bag from them for, you know, £2, £3, £6. It's not always just supermarkets either. Sometimes it's restaurants or whatever in your. So check your area, because you might find that you can eat for pretty cheap or even free. And who doesn't love free stuff? I love free stuff.
Free meal, that's all right, isn't it?
It's pretty good.
Over there at the Dorchester or something. I bet they're not on there. And this one as well, apps that will get kids moving. What's going on here?
Oh, absolutely. And there's loads of great games out there. I think the one that springs to mind for most people is Pokemon Go, which obviously, you know, you walk around, collect Pokemon, but that's been around for a while. And I think there's a better option called Merlin, which actually isn't a game, but I think can be turned into a game. So if you've got kids, Merlin basically identifies birds from the noises. So as you're walking around, it will listen out for the birds, and then it will pop up with the birds that it's hearing.
Right.
So you can turn it into a kind of Pokemon-style game with your kids. You can go for a long walk, go outside. It'll even flag when you're seeing rare birds. And so you can sort of treat it like Pokemon, where you're trying to collect all the birds.
So it picks up the little squeak.
Yeah, so it's actually...
what's it called? The bird song.
Yeah, the bird song. So it's from Cornell Lab, and it's, you know, scientists have made this. And I've tried it, and it picks it up instantly. It's really, really impressive. Chris Packer would be very jealous of the bird app.
Surprised
really
he's not
quick.
the face of this. What's it called? Merlin?
Merlin, and it's really good. It'll get kids learning about birds and nature, and also, you know, it sort of gamifies going for a walk. So if you're struggling to get your kid out for a walk, but it's also fun for adults too. And you know, you learn the bird songs, and you'll be a pro birder in no time.
That's quite effective, isn't it? Because it is you know, it's one of those things that you don't realise how much wildlife is in your back garden.
I mean, you can use this in your back garden.
Until somebody points it all out. Of course you could. Because I just think there's like pigeons and those blackbirds.
And sometimes the apples show a rare bird and you can't see it, and you're trying to hunt it down because you can hear the noise. So, you know, it's thrilling stuff.
It's a great moment, isn't it, when you hear an owl?
Oh, yeah, lovely.
Anybody say you actually hear a real owl in the way you go, wow, there's an owl. Where's the owl?
You've got to get out in the evening with Merlin, sit in the garden.
You've got to get out,
do a little barbecue, it'll be lovely.
And these aren't all paid for apps. Some will charge you a fee, some will have sort of in-app purchases, but there's a lot of free stuff out there as well.
Yeah, loads of free stuff. So Merlin is free. There's lots of different ways of getting TV for free too. So Disney Plus you can get for free if you're a Club Lloyd's member with Lloyd's Banking. Tesco Club Card members can also get discounted Disney Plus. Apple TV is really easy to get free. If you bought an Apple device recently, it should come with several months free Apple TV as well. But if you're a student, you can get Apple TV for free with the music subscription. So that's another great way to get it. Amazon Prime as well, you can get half price if you're a student or 18 to 22 years old. So if you have a youngster in your house or someone that's at uni, that's a great way to get Amazon Prime for half price, and then you get the TV subscription with it.
Wow. See, there's all of this stuff people don't know. I mean,
it's hiding, it's lurking in the apps.
Martin Lewis used to talk about this a lot, but he would say, look, if you want to get a cheaper phone contract, all you got to do is join a gym, and do 28,000-mile marathons, and then Vodafone will give you 6 months for or something like that. But the really good stuff, I discovered the other day, I think on Deliveroo, that if you with Amazon Prime or something, do you get free delivery or something?
Yeah, you get free delivery on restaurants over, on orders over £15 from restaurants. So it's Deliveroo Silver Plus. You get a year's membership for free. Normally it's about £3.50 a month. So, you're saving 40, 50 quid a year with this, which is, pretty good.
It's worth doing, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. I think people need to go into the accounts that they're already paying for and look at the perks, because all of these websites and apps are very competitive, so they almost always have really good perks that people are missing. You just have to get in and you'll undoubtedly make savings.
We talked about a lot here. Where can people people find a little more of this information, Sean? Where's the best place to look?
So if you go to the Sun Tech, you'll find loads of ways to save money with tech, but also if you go to the Sun Club section on the website, there's really, really good deals, exclusive content. It's only a couple of quid a month, and you'll potentially save hundreds or even thousands with some of the tips and tricks on there. It's, it's really, really good stuff, and I can't recommend it enough.
Brilliant. Sean, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Sean
Nice to meet
Keach
you.
back with us on the programme, Head of Technology and Science over there at the Sun. Thank you to him, and we're back with you coming next on Talk.
There is absolutely no excuse on this earth for why we are where we are 1 year into more than a year into a new government. This administration had plenty of time to prepare proper solutions to stop the boats. What's happened, in fact, as everybody knows, is that there's been a multiplier. Instead of stopping the boats, even more than ever are coming over. And for the government now to say, oh gosh, things are looking a little bit hairy.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
One here from Debbie on hacking. I had a great email the other day saying they'd hacked my phone, taken over my camera, and got some illicit videos of me that they will send to my contacts if I don't pay them. I just thought you'd be better blackmailing my contacts who probably would pay not to have them sent to me. It's interesting that, isn't it? Because the likes, thank you, Debbie, for that, and most adults, if they got something like that, would go, well, that's clearly ridiculous. But there's been horrendous cases of a similar nature where certainly young boys have been blackmailed because some have been online and they've, kind of shown themselves online, and then someone's gone, we're not that love of your life you thought you were going to meet up with, all legit, as in age-wise. We've taken snapshots of you and we're going to, blackmail you, and it's ended, horrendously with the death of some young boys in that respect. But I would imagine, even if you didn't go that far, even if you didn't have, if you just got the email that Debbie said, you know, a certain mindset, if a 14-year-old kid got that, they probably think, oh my God, what are they, how have they done this? What have they done? It would perturb you, right? That's the funny world we live in. Sean's in Essex. Sean, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, Ian. How you doing?
I'm good as gold, thank you. Yeah, what do you want to say?
Well, it's a no-brainer, really, Ian, isn't it? These people that are coming over into our country, they're basically illegal, which means they're breaking the law. If me or you broke the law, we wouldn't end up in a 4-star hotel.
You wouldn't have thought so. Yeah.
No.
But you'd have to claim asylum.
Oh, right. Ah, that's where we're going wrong.
Yeah, if you nip over to Madrid and say, I'm claiming asylum because I'm being oppressed in Essex, then they'll stick you up in the Four Seasons right in the centre. It's about 900 quid a night, that one.
So at the moment, my daughter's in Tunisia.
Yep.
So instead of her getting a flight back to Gatwick next week...
No, don't bother with that.
Just get on a dinghy.
Yeah.
Because she's married to a Tunisian and it's all legal, and they've got a 9-month-old baby.
Yep.
And they've been desperately looking to get their own place, and they've been told it's a 2.5-year waiting list.
Wow. And that's on a good day.
Yeah. So maybe just get on a dinghy, come over.
Or she could stay in Tunisia and claim asylum there and get a right nice
That's
gaff.
what I'm thinking of doing.
Yeah, you can all move over there.
Yeah.
You could start a whole new cult, the cult of Sean, down there in Tunisia. Yeah, I love it. Sean, thank you, mate, for that. Great call. And Alex in Essex says, I'm fed up of hearing diversity is our strength. It should be unity is our strength. And the one thing that unites us is that we are British citizens. Doesn't matter if you're English, Scottish, Welsh, Irish, Manx, Cornish, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, Sikh or any other creed. If you wish to come here, then adopt the British way of life. Tea, biscuits, fish and chips, tikka masala, queuing, moaning about the weather, saying sorry when someone else bumps into you. If you don't want to adopt some of those things that make us British, this is not the place for you. And a stick of seaside rock thrown in as well.
I would say so.
Yeah.
I think that's very, very sensible. Is there an Ian Collins cult? I mean, I feel I'm part of it anyway, but...
There is a little bit of one. I've been getting your emails regularly, Peter. I shall be attending to them, although from midnight tonight I might have a problem with some of the requests, but that's another issue. But listen...
Wow.
We will wait. I'm just saying. We will wait.
3 minutes to 4.
3 minutes to 4.
You know who said if you really want to make $1 million, you have to start a religion?
Yes.
You know who said that? L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology.
L. Ron Hubbard. Yeah, he was a character, wasn't he, Ronnie?
Certainly was. The Ron Meister.
Yeah.
Purged those Thetans.
Yeah, they're in, where is it? Their headquarters over here, the Scientologists. It's in, I'm about to find out because Sam's going to tell me.
Okay.
But it's big. You go past it and it's just incredible. You know, I think a lot of it is...
Elaborate.
East Grinstead, that's it. East Grinstead, you wouldn't think so, would you?
I think the Scientologists would be
apparently,
there,
Tom Cruise will never set foot in this country without a trip to East Grinstead.
Okay.
You go down, they're all there, Travolta, the whole lot.
Yeah.
So you imagine the dancing of an evening.
That's it. Especially on a Saturday night. We've got some really good stuff coming up in Drive. We're going to be continuing the discussion about asylum, about doctors as well. Jeremy Corbyn doesn't seem to know what his new party's called. We think it's called Your Party, but it's not, according to Zara Sultana, who's his co-leader.
My party.
Yeah, well, no, yes. Therein lies the problem. Also,
I think they've just got a pronoun issue because they thrown that thing
them
up
party.
again,
Yes. You heard about the non-binary gold prospector, didn't you? There's gold in them there hills. We're also talking about an influencer who went on a trip to Israel, and then that triggered a referral to an anti-radicalisation section of the police. So we're talking to her, Holly Passmore. We're talking to her. We're talking as well about Britain possibly being